All right, I'll call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the City Council here October 4th, 2016. So I see we've got some great people in the crowd tonight, as we do every week. So welcome one and all. You can see everyone's here, and we will start with the invocation. Father Thomas Nabel, if you're here. It doesn't look like he's here. Maybe the Mayor Pro Tem could lead the invocation.
Please prepare yourself for prayer, and we just ask, Father, that you bless our city, bless those that serve us in the streets of Lake Forest as Orange County Sheriff deputies. Thank you for the Orange County Fire Authority, Father God, and those that are first responders, Father God. We thank you for men and women of such dedication. We thank you, Father God, for the City Council meeting, Father. We pray for your peace upon us all. Thank you, Father God, for giving us wisdom to do what's right, Father, and the courage to always stand there. We thank you and praise you, and we give you glory for this council meeting and this city. We ask for your blessings upon our businesses, our neighbors, and this city council. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Also, the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, we have some Boy Scouts, and we like to have our men and women and boys come up and please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We have Troop 604 with us and a member of 787. Please come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'd be so kind, as we honor the greatest symbol of freedom in the world. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, boys.
And with that, we'll have presentations 1 and 2. We could go. Let's do the student liaison first. I think I saw Mr. Joseph. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Joseph Surrey here, reporting to you all the great things we've had and will be having going on at El Toro. This past week at El Toro has been filled with great events and great sporting events. On Thursday, we held our annual back-to-school night where parents can come in and meet their child's teachers. It was a huge success, and we heard many great things about it. The previous Thursday was El Toro's Club Rush, in which club presidents set up booths where kids could come and sign up and join their clubs. A large number of kids signed up for all different kinds of clubs, ranging from service clubs to non-academic clubs set up by their peers. El Toro's sports are in full swing, and El Toro football team will be playing this Friday for the start of their league, and they will be playing at home against Aliso Niguel. El Toro's football team will then be facing Dana Hills next week at Dana Hills. Other sports teams, such as our ladies volleyball team, has been doing very well, beating the Chabuco Hills Mustangs and the Mission Viejo Diablos. We are very proud of them. Student life at El Toro right now is better than ever, especially for the seniors. 20 seniors, 10 boys and 10 girls, have just found out they are homecoming court runners-ups and have the chance to be El Toro's 2016 homecoming king and queen. Another exciting event is the senior spikeball tournament going on. Every day at Snack, each of the 32 teams that signed up to play battle each other in a single elimination tournament. The tournament is not yet over and has been a great success. The most exciting news, although, is the news regarding the Golden Apple Award. This award was set up by our new activities director at the start of the school year and is an award to recognize teachers for all the great things they do for El Toro. Last month's winner was Mrs. Christine Francis, and this month's winner is Mrs. Monica Hines. We are so grateful she is a part of the El Toro family. Things to look forward to at El Toro is our homecoming dance, which will be on the 29th of October, and is themed Homecoming in Paradise, and El Toro's Homecoming Fair on the 27th of October. Thank you all so much for listening. That's all for tonight, and as always, go Chargers.
By the way, I like your tie.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. All right, now I'll entertain motions on both presentations.
Presentation.
Second that.
Cast your votes.
That motion carries unanimously. Agenda Item 1, proclamation proclaiming October 9th through the 16th, 2016 as Fire Prevention Week, submitted by City Clerk.
All right, I'll meet you down at the podium.
Agenda Item 2, presentation by the Orange County Treasurer Tax Collector, submitted by Deputy City Manager, Director of Finance.
Welcome.
Good evening. Let's see, I think they're turning on the presentation. Just a moment. Well, good evening, Honorable Mayor Hamilton, Mayor Pro Tem Voights, and members of the City Council. My name is Sherry Friedenrich, your Orange County Treasurer, and I'm honored to be here tonight. I'm going to give you a brief update on the monies that you have entrusted to the County of Orange Treasurer. We appreciate your Deputy City Manager, Director of Finance, City Treasurer Neves' assistance in coordinating our presentation this evening. Let's see. All right. I plan to cover three key areas this evening. First, some information about the city's investment in the Orange County Investment Pool that we call OSIP. Secondly, some highlights of information about our responsibilities as the county treasurer for the funds that you've invested. And finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about some benefits of investing in OSIP and some other information that we think would be important to you. I am going to close with just giving you a brief update on property taxes, since I also collect those on behalf of the city. To start off, we noted in your investment policy that you have OSIP as an authorized investment up to 100%, and your August 31st investments total is approximately $105 million. Of that, the current OSIP investment is $20.2 million, or 19%. You also have investments in your money market of your short-term cash in OSIP, LAIF, CAMP, and a federated government money market fund that total just over $61 million, or 58% of your total investments. One of the very conservative things that you have, and I noted in your investment policy, it is risk avoidance, is that you need 6 months of capital and operating expenses in cash and short-term investments, and we're honored to be able to fill part of that need for you. The next chart shows the balances from when you invested in OSIP to the current point. As you can see, you started with just about $6 million back in the first of the year in January, and currently you are over $20 million here as of the end of August. The next chart shows your investment balances by type of investment. We think this is important for diversification, certainly one of those key points in your investment policy statement. You will notice that you only have a balance at the top in 2016, the $20.2 million, but we wanted to show you some trending of where the investments have been for the past 5 years, so you can see what we've invested in. As you can see, we are very conservative. The green represents the government sponsors enterprises, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, those that are supported by the government, and the pink is the treasuries, and as you can see, those represent the most significant part of that pie chart. We did change several years ago, and we've started investing more in treasuries, which are, if we needed to sell for a unexpected need from one of our investors, we would be able to sell those as a very small bid versus ask. So they're very liquid. Obviously, they're very able to sell, and they're great for our liquidity portfolio. We are getting some additional yield, however, from the government sponsors enterprises, so those are important also. The next chart, I think, is also very important under your investment policy. It's our ratings. And as you can see, we have 99% that is in the top 2 rating categories, just 1% in the single A. And I think, again, we, just like your city, have a very conservative portfolio. We want the money to be there when you need it, and so we want to make sure that we aren't taking any undue credit risk. The next chart shows the investment yield in OSIP for the last several years. And as you can see, it started off in a little higher as rates dropped, and as maturing investments that were when the Fed funds was at 5%, they started rolling off. You could see our yields drop. Then as you can see from 2014, we have increased those yields. And one of the things we did is we looked at our cash management processes, because we wanted to be smart in cash management. We didn't want to take on credit risk. So as you saw, we have a very high credit quality, but we're managing our cash better, and that is why we're able to have that higher yield. In addition, the Fed did raise short-term interest rates by 25 basis points this last year. So that has some contribution to that higher rate also. Now, if the Fed were to raise rates again, you would expect to see probably a 25 basis point increase that is not built into this chart here. Next, I want to briefly cover just some other OSIP information that I think is beneficial to you as doing your due diligence as to one of the reasons we like to come annually before our investors. As treasurer, I am the trustee and the fiduciary of public funds, and we invest based on the prudent investor standard. Our objectives are the same as yours: safety first, liquidity, which is just as important, and lastly, yield. We operate in the public interest. Government code allows you to invest in us, and so there are some of the items that we bring to your investing for our. Next, an important area is ownership of pooled funds. You also have investments in LAIF, and you may remember several years ago, LAIF didn't balance, or the state did not balance its budget. And what happened is they withheld withdrawals from the local agency investment fund. So at that time, the state put in a law that said the state treasurer does not have access to those funds. Well, it's very similar for the county. We also have a law that was put into place that said the funds in the county pool that don't belong to the county are not theirs. And so this is the code section that indicates that they cannot be seized by county officials. So as treasurer, I wear many hats, but my hat is for my investors, and I'm to protect those investors that invest in our pool. Next, I'd like to cover just some key statistics on the county funds. I do invest over $7.5 billion. About half of those are invested in OSIP, which is the county pool plus voluntary pool participants. The other half, if you didn't know, I actually manage all the funds for the school districts and the community college districts. So that makes up the other half of those funds. Our weighted average, our WAM, which is very important to you, I know you have it on every monthly report for you, is just over 1 year. So again, very short Part of that is certainly the liquidity that we need to maintain, but also rates are low. You're not getting paid to go long, and if rates do go up, that would have a significant impact on your market value. Our expenses are low. They're 6.5 basis points, still a little higher than LAIF, which is at 0.5 basis points, but we are certainly managing our investments to what we think is most prudent. Voluntary pool participants are less than 2.5% of our funds, so a very small portion. The next chart just shows you some history since 2008. Probably a couple of changes are we did not have daily liquidity back then. It was a 3-day requirement. Now we are really a liquidity pool for our investors such as you, and we do have daily liquidity that you can receive those funds out if you need those. In addition, our expenses have significantly decreased. Back then we were at 10 basis points, now we're at 6.5 basis points. Again, better management of our funds so that we can increase that very low yield that we're currently getting today in today's low interest rate environment. We also want to talk about, we do invest in the county debt. We do our due diligence just like with any other investors. They issue some short-term pension obligation bonds. I understand that you guys just paid off your $4 million UAAL, so congratulations to OSERS. That is excellent. I wish the county was in the same fiscal shape. They are not. So I congratulate you. The county does issue these. We do a due diligence. Since we don't invest in municipals normally, this does provide a slightly bump in our yield. But again, safety first is the most important. Just a few benefits of investing in OSIP that I'm not going to cover all of the areas. I think one of the most important ones is that we are 99% in the top 2 rating categories. Very important. Liquidity, which again is so critical along with safety. Most of our funds are captive. That means if the county wants to make an ability to determine that to be made today, tomorrow. I know just last month they had an unexpected large payment come up. And because we had a maturity coming in, I said, we'd really like it to go on this day. That makes sense for us in the pool. We were able to get them to accommodate that date, and we have that flexibility for being those captive funds. It benefits you as a voluntary pool participant. In addition, a couple of key points. There's new SEC regulations that are coming on for money market funds. As a local government investment pool, they don't affect us, so it will not affect anything that your investments in us. And we don't use any type of floating NAV money market funds that will be going into effect in the next several weeks. And I did notice that your fund was also a government fund, so it was not going to be subject to those floating NAVs also. Very important. Next, just to show our liquidity, you can see that in the first year, up to 365 days, we have over 50% of our funds maturing. So again, a very liquid portfolio, but because of good cash management, we're able to try to capture safely that yield with very high quality. Next and last of the objectives is the net yield. Again, our fiscal year 17 is 7. We were up 7. So we do expect that we would be able to meet. We try to be conservative on our estimate because that's what we provide to our investors. We receive competitive pricing because we have very large trade sizes. That benefits you. The pool administration costs, again, are spread through all the participants. So, if the pool grows, reduce those costs. Lastly, I think a very important area, as you all may remember, there was an unfortunate incident back in the 90s from the treasurer, and I can tell you that I've been the treasurer for a public entity for 16 years in the city of Huntington Beach and for going on 5 years here, and my goal is to protect those funds. That is my highest priority, and with that, oversight is very important. We have a lot of oversight, many of that has come since the bankruptcy back in the 90s. And we have a daily internal compliance check by our Treasury Division. And I can tell you that every single one of any exception that we've had since I've been here has been identified by our Treasury. So our audits that we've had have not identified any items that we have been out of compliance, and they've all been very minor, so very important. We have very sophisticated software that does pre- and post-trade compliance, so it's not just the human looking at it, we also have the system who is helping to make sure that we are in compliance with our guidelines in our IPS, our investment policy. We do reviews of our issuers daily, weekly, quarterly, and annually to make sure that they should stay on our approved issuer list. Again, that's even for our AA and our AAA names, which are very important. We have a Treasury Oversight Committee. That committee was started after the bankruptcy. Government code change, it required a Treasury Oversight Committee be put into place. So we immediately, of course, instituted that Treasury Oversight Committee. They also required that an annual audit be done. So that audit is done of the investment policies, and we also have the regular audit that's done for all of the financials. We also have a review that is done by the Treasury Oversight Committee. They direct a review to be done. So in addition to those required, they have an additional oversight that they have on us. We have various internal audits that do come in and look at our performance. They look at various areas. In fact, right now they're just doing their annual compliance audit. And we also provide a written report to our governing body, and it is put on the web. I think that was one thing, is that there was no transparency in any of the information. So I would, if you have a question, probably we have one of the best websites, the most information that we put out on our investment pool. We want it to be transparent. We put our approved issuer list. We put we were required to put all of our transactions, but we put more than we need to because we want that information to be there. And we also then have that online so that anyone, any taxpayers, can go online and look at that. I was just looking at the statistics today on our web for last month, and I'm amazed at how many people, over 1,000 people, looked at the investments. So we know that it is getting reviewed, and I have had people call me and say, why are you doing this? And it's great that they have that information online. Lastly, in terms of just other information that we have, we try to communicate with your agency, with Mr. Neves, regularly on anything that we think would be important to him in the market. That helps us be a resource to you. We also have tours of our trading desk, so if any of you want to come on and take a look at our trading desk, we could coordinate that. I think one of the other benefits that we offer is training. As a large county, we are able to get low-cost training in. We offer that to our voluntary pool participants. And this next year, we're going to be having a cash handling training. And what we will do is we will offer that to you and your staff so that if they would like to come to that training, they would be able to come at the same rate as the county. So we will be in touch with your finance director to see if he's interested in sending anyone. With that, that concludes my presentation. We are available for any questions, and we thank you again for allowing us to invest your funds. I would like to introduce my chief deputy of Treasurer Tax Collector. He's over our Treasury Division, Paul Gorman, if he could stand. Thank you. And so with that, we are available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Real quick. So it sounds like you're saying the investments are safe.
Yes, I have 20 years in public sector, and I need to go home and sleep at night. So certainly we are doing everything we can to make sure that safety is number one.
Great. And I think you said something, did you mention that the camp funds are also exempt from the SEC? Is that? You
know, we don't invest in camp currently. I believe that they are also the prime money market funds actually will become floating funds on October 15th, but you have the Federated Government Money Market Fund, and that is government funds are not going floating NAV. So that is the fund that you also have that definitely is in good shape. You're taken care of well with your Director of Finance, City Treasurer.
Great, thank you. All right.
When you first came into office as the county treasurer, you put some very unique and forward-thinking things to save money for the county and all of us as taxpayers. Could you talk to us about that?
Yes, thank you. And in fact, I was going to give you an update on collections, so this is a great opportunity to talk about property tax collections. This last week, we billed over $6 billion in property taxes. That's a record for the county. And one of the good news for the city of Lake Forest is that our collection rate is at an all-time high. Last year, we collected 99.6% of the 5.7 billion property taxes that we billed. So only 0.4% were delinquent. And that means that you were able, in those apportionments, to get the cash up front so that you could decide where you wanted to invest it, what you wanted to do with that cash, and it sounds like you've been stockpiling a lot of cash, which is excellent. The good news is that we've also issued our tax bills, so hopefully all of you may have gotten a little love note in the mail from my staff, your property tax bill, and this is the earliest we've got all the bills out, and so you should actually see a larger first apportionment coming up for dollars coming in than you have in the past. So expect a little bit more money earlier for this first apportionment. What we've done for property taxes is really made a lot of changes. We've really focused on self-service online. I mean, one of the areas that has impacted here in Lake Forest is you have had some Mello-Roos taxes, and we have a lot of taxpayers that had questions. We posted a whole page on Mello-Roos taxes when the bonds paid off, and we are very pleased that this year, here in Lake Forest, you've had some of your Mello-Roos districts actually be dissolved, and credits are on those current tax bills going back to those taxpayers. We've also provided all of the last 6 years' tax bills online. So when I came, we were only putting the current year tax bill online. And so every April, we'd get all these calls, and it's because when you filed your state and federal taxes, you had to use 2 years of property tax bills. But of course, we only had the current year online. So we started leaving tax bills online. So for the last 6 years, now all of those bills are online, and our incoming phone calls have decreased by 33%. So we've been able to redeploy those resources or not fill positions to save the county money, and since everything I do basically gets apportioned to taxpayers, it's then saved taxpayers money. So very important. This last year we just added payment details because a lot of people said, well, what day did I pay my tax on? Not just that it's paid. So we then added 2 years of tax details this last year. And I think one of the other interesting thing that you might find helpful is that we added a GIS map. The county has one of the best GIS mapping systems. And so we mapped our parcels, basically the tax bill. So you can go on to ocgov.com/OC tax map. You can put in your parcel address or your APN, your parcel number, and you can see on the Google type map your parcel and some key information. And the realtors are very excited because they used to have to go on and put in each address they wanted to check. Well, now you could just hover over the next parcel and you can see what their assessed value is, what their tax is. The supervisor like it has the supervisor district. So for those districts that are on the border, now they know which house goes in which district. So it's a very nice tool for them. So I would encourage someone to go online, take a look at those. Probably the last thing we've done, not the last, but the last thing I'll talk about is that we've really tried to focus on having people who have the money to pay timely. So we've instituted we've increased our tax reminder program. We've doubled it over the last 4 years. And we've also really tried to get the word out to people to pay timely. And that has really helped for that 0.4%. Essentially, millions of people have saved not paying that 10% penalty and 18% interest by us having higher collection rates. And what that means is it means that money can go back in the economy. It can go back to do the things that the taxpayer wants and not just going to fund those fees. So thank you for the opening. I hope that gave you a little bit of information about what we're doing with those tax dollars that initially come to us and then get apportioned to you after we put them in.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation. You coming to present to us of what's going on in the county, you make a tax collector not so scary. So thank you for your integrity and your character and your devotion to the people of Orange County and Lake Forest. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question.
Yes.
You said that the Mello-Roos tax got dissolved. We still have it for people in Foothill Ranch.
You do.
And they're, constantly saying what's going on. How can we get that dissolved?
Well, you'll look at, you can go onto our website at ocgov.com/Mello-Roos, all one word. You can see when the maturity of that bond is. So once that bond matures, if there's no other expenses, which there shouldn't be, then it would be going back to the county and saying, we would like this to be dissolved, because there should be no other dollars collected, and then it would, again, do exactly what we did this time. The board approved to dissolve those. So I don't have that specific Mello-Roos bond maturity date, but it would be fairly soon after that, and I know the board has committed to providing those taxpayers back versus leaving those districts outstanding.
So it's a function of the date. There's really nothing we could do to dissolve it today.
Right, no, because what happens is that assessment pays for the principal and interest on that bond. So every year, those people paying Mello-Roos goes to pay the bond down. And of course, there's that principal payment which pays the bond down, and then the interest just goes to the bondholder. So that year it is paid off is right after that is when you want to close off the, make sure that you've crossed your T's, dotted your I's as a CPA, get all those dollars reconciled, and then dissolve it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that. So you said if there are no other expenses, so there is the possibility for operating expenses and things of that nature. Is that correct?
You know, it would
Things can be
depend on
potentially
the Mello-Roos document. The governing documents would identify that. We would certainly hope that since the infrastructure has been put in and there's really no other administration, that there should be no cost. But that governing document, and I haven't looked at them, so you always have to have, as a CPA, I always have to make sure I never say never, because if that governing document has some small word in it. But I know that I believe the board is committed to dissolving those and not continuing those.
Absolutely, and I just happen to have the document with me, so I do have the verbiage there, but I appreciate your comments. Thanks.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, if I may, what if there are expenses, in fact, Sherry? What if there are some expenses? What happens then?
It would be up to, again, the governing board, which in this case I believe is the County of Orange, as the person who put it in place prior to the incorporation here in Lake Forest. So what you would want to do is you would want to reach out to all of them and say, we expect that if it allows for any operating expenses, we want justification as exactly why we're saying it shouldn't be dissolved, and you would want to have that background so that you could then turn to your constituents and make sure that you explain to them, but it is out of your control. It is the Board of Supervisors who would make that decision.
Thank you for clarifying that we have nothing to do with it, we can't, but...
This is an agenda item later that's going to be a long discussion, so you kind of got sucked into it. But
please don't interrupt me, Mayor. I wasn't finished with my questions. So, Sherry, if I may, so if there are expenses, they need to be paid one way or another. We can't just dissolve it. I mean, for the life of me, if there are expenses, they need to be paid from
Right, and I am
councils.
not a professional. I haven't looked at the documents, so I am giving you a general
Right,
overview,
right.
so I really am not qualified to talk
Right.
specifically about anything.
I fully understand that. But my question is, if there are expenses, we can't just write it off. We gotta pay those expenses, I assume, somehow from some fund. You said that
Again, you're getting into the granular detail, and I'm really just giving you the overview, so, I just don't want to get drawn into that detail because I haven't looked at that bond indenture, and every bond indenture would specifically identify those types of things that would be there.
Correct, I understand that. I fully understand that. I'm not asking you a specific question. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just asking you if there are expenses. You said if there are no expenses, then it can be dissolved, theoretically.
No, I'm saying the governing documents would govern what happens if it allows additional expenses or not. The governing document is the one that would have that. So
Fair enough.
really, that would be the structure, just like any legal document that they have, that's the structure that should be considered.
Fair enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
madam.
thank you. That leads us to public comments. So at this time, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any item not on the agenda. And if you can fill out a speaker request form, you'll see some lights come on. With the yellow light, I believe you have 1 minute left. You're entitled to 3 minutes. And do we have any speakers?
Yes, Your Honor. Gregory Sprague, followed by Andrew O'Connor.
I think he might have...
Andrew O'Connor, followed by Sherry Anderson.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor. My name is Andrew O'Connor from Foothill Ranch, resident since 1990. I've given the agenda, what I want to talk about, out to you as well as the city manager. It's not acceptable that 3 council members and the city manager and the assistant city manager did not attend the Lake Forest Elementary meeting last week. The community and innocent students are in pain both physically and mentally over the rash that has appeared on both the students and staff. I would like to thank council members Dr. Gardner and Adam Nick for attending this meeting. Embarrassment that 3 elected officials right here who constantly talk about supporting the community, as well as 2 highly paid administrators, didn't bother to attend this meeting. Not to mention Councilman Voights, who is on the county vector control, was not present. At the end of the public comments tonight, I want answers from all 5 of you why you weren't there. Councilman Robinson, I have your ballot statement from the Orange County Voter Information Guide, Exhibit 1, in my presentation tonight. Last month, I addressed the Councilman Robinson's 2012 campaign literature where he promised, and he's laughing at me, Mr. Mayor, I find that very disrespectful.
Please just
I'm just saying he's laughing
put your
at me. You can't see it, he's laughing at me.
It's just your time.
No, we're going to add it back on, my friend. But that did not deliver. 4 years later, Councilman Robinson, you're spewing more misinformation. It's ironic that you profess your faith to Christianity, reference the Bible for your guidance and decision-making. Your claim regarding Mello-Roos is false. I know. I've been paying it since 1990, and it will expire in 2019. We have a committee in the community, and you never came and spoke to us about this, Exhibit number 2. You or any other elected official can do nothing. It needs to be paid off, and the bond will be retired. Helped in our schools? I've asked you many times for you to substantiate this. You have never provided any details to teach Teach Sunday school? Is this what you teach, the Lake Forest News, in saying that I'm on the Megan's Law, I'm a credentialed educator in the state of California? Seriously? This is what you teach? And you're an elder in your church? Your name's right on here, sir. Did you show this to your church elders for their input? 100 Southern California employees in Lake Forest, California? Really? Isn't this your wife's grandfather's company in Long Beach, Los Angeles County, California you're referring to? I think your ballot statement's false. Prior to our Village Pond Park? Seriously? Randy Johnson's been talking about for...
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Who's the next speaker?
Sherry Anderson, followed by Randy Johnson.
Welcome.
Councilman Robinson, Hamilton, and Voights, you voted for the 10-year contract with the horrible, corrupt High Kill Orange County Shelter. Lake Forest residents hate the high killing you support and filled this room each time it was discussed. You put your political careers and the county ahead of the desires of the residents and our pets. My comments tonight are directed to Councilman Adam Nick and Dr. James Gardner, who voted against the horrible contract. I also direct my comments to our city attorney, city manager, and our assistant city manager, who attends the secret shelter meetings where I hope she supports our pets that are dying there. I haven't read the shelter contract, but I assume our city attorney did not approve an all one-sided contract serving only the county. There should be some way to require that they do what's right, ethical, and legal, not just selling us out. I want to know why they still are not making corrections to the 5 grand jury reports. I would like pressure put on them to follow the law and make the required corrections. This includes the poor leadership, poor management, poor procedures, and other violations. We must have some oversight, especially since we're spending millions to pay for a shelter 17 miles away. We also have laws requiring transparency. There have been numerous requests for data, which they refuse to release. I'm not a lawyer, but isn't that against our laws? I'm concerned because since signing the contract, it looks like the already high kill numbers are going up. I'd like to know why. When Dr. Hawkins was here, she mentioned an animal behaviorist. Why are more animals now being killed, being labeled unadoptable due to behavior? Many of these animals are rescued can be seen on videos and hanging out with other dogs and families without behavioral problems. Is it because of the veterinarian's lawsuit last year for forging his name? They can't kill them as easily for false medical reasons? I would also like to address why offer free adoptions. This is crazy and cruel. Rescue groups around the country warn people against offering free pets. The animals are in great danger. This is where the scumbags pick up dogs and cats for bait for dog fights. They're sold for research, used for snake food and human consumption, and horrible abuse. This is just plain stupid. Why aren't they giving them to the rescue groups for free or for at least reasonable fees? Many of the rescue groups listed with OC say they can't work with them anymore. They make it difficult and charge high fees, often over $200 to save sick dogs. Why? Isn't animal welfare important? Making money is more important than and yet we're paying thousands for every single animal picked up in Lake Forest. We need longer than 3 minutes.
Thank you for your comments.
Randy Johnson, followed by Gregory Sprague.
Welcome.
Good evening, Council. Randy Johnson from Lake Forest, and you received a submission here, written submission from me. It's about the history, sort of a summary report for the Village Pond Park, and then actually a history of the discussions that went on, like over the last, 5 or 6 meetings, something like that. You know, this has really been a wild ride, for me. I've been before you, I've lost count, 2, 3, 4 years, I don't know, talking about the Village Pond Park and what a disaster it is, okay? And nobody paid any attention to me, except for maybe Councilman Gardner. He seemed like he was concerned. But I didn't hear anybody else really be concerned until we start passing out literature in the neighborhoods. Then all of a sudden, Mr. Robinson turns to the city attorney, can you give us an update? I'm serious. That's the truth. That's the honest to God truth. And so this has taught me something, a lesson that I will never forget. And it should teach the public a lesson. It doesn't matter how right you are with the city of Lake Forest. It doesn't make any difference at all. You can be dead right, okay? And you can be morally right, factually right, all right? And it doesn't make any difference until you get about 10, 12, 15 people together to storm the city hall chambers and start screaming. And then finally something happens. It finally turns around and there's a letter written. Oh my God, the clouds part and the sun comes through. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing what can happen in a very short period of time when you get about a dozen or two angry people up here at the podium asking what the hell is going on? Otherwise, you people just don't care. That's not a representative government. It's not. You don't represent us, and I've told you that over and over again, and it's the honest to God truth. You don't do anything unless you're forced to right before the election season. You shouldn't even be sitting up there. You don't deserve to be council people. And the three of you especially. And you should be ashamed of yourselves. Now, as far as this letter going out, it didn't say anything about costs at all. The shared cost with the Lake Forest Community Association and the city, there's no numbers there at all. Have they agreed at all for their share of the costs to pay the city of Lake Forest for the dredging of the pond, for the clearance of the pond, for the equipment for the pond? Has that been rectified or not? I want that answer, that question answered tonight, because cost is a significant, important thing in the contract. Because I used to negotiate contracts, I know. If you don't get past cost, I'm sorry, it's dead in the water. Have they agreed to pay their shared costs for the pond or not? I want that question answered tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I don't see Mr. Sprague having returned. No. Leah Basil?
Welcome.
Thank you. Leah Basil, hello. I wasn't going to say anything. I'm just sitting back and listening to the public comments. But when Sherry Anderson was up here speaking and giving all those terrible statistics about the terrible things that are happening to our animals, There's a little girl in the very back of the room, sitting right back there, covering her ears. She was actually crying, listening to what the statistics were. And it goes to show that many times we make decisions and we may not always think about the end result and what it does to the residents. There's a perfect example. The Orange County Animal Shelter and all the terrible things they do to those animals actually does affect us. It doesn't just kill animals, it hurts a part of our hearts. They do not have a voice. We need to be the voice to the voiceless. And to sign a contract where we have no ownership, it's just ridiculous. It's like you have a neighbor who wants to build a house for $1 million, and you say, okay, sure, I'll give you $500,000 for that, but you can live there, and I'll take no ownership, but I'm going to give you that money, and you can do whatever you please with it. That's what we've just done with the Orange County Animal Shelter. I don't understand why we have this contract, and I'm so upset. I'm finding the words, I can't even express them. I'm just so upset that to see a little girl in the back crying about what we have done to our animals. It's deplorable, and it needs to change. We need to get rid of that contract. It's just horrible.
We've had no further requests.
Thank you. And thank you for your comments.
I'd like to respond to some of the comments.
Sure.
Number one, sometimes people in the audience get up and they're upset with me, and I try to keep a neutral face, although probably my blood pressure gets up. So I apologize for you if any of us smirk or smile or laugh when you're talking. We should take you seriously. You're our residents, and though sometimes that's hard, honestly, if we're being criticized. On the other hand, if we weren't prepared to be criticized, we shouldn't be here. And if we can't take the criticism, we shouldn't be here. So I apologize if any of you felt as if we weren't listening and if any of us were disrespectful to you. That's a comment to Andy O'Connor. For Sherry, when the three guys to my right voted for the contract, I had a discussion with the city attorney, and I probably need to ask him a question. Do I have a gag on discussing our conversations?
No, there's no gag on our conversation.
Unless it's Village Palm Park.
I don't recall the conversation, so
It's going to be okay, stop me if I go down the wrong. But when I saw that contract, I said, how could they, sign off on such a stupid contract? This is absolutely ridiculous. And the city attorney said something like, being stupid doesn't mean it's illegal. In other words, if you remember that conversation, the council can engage in a contract which isn't particularly good, but that doesn't make the contract illegal. So that's, an answer to your question. How could we do it? I guess we can do just about anything so long as it's not technically illegal. So that's my comment. With that, Randy Johnson wanted an answer to the shared costs. Am I now, don't drink, you got to listen here. The shared costs, am I allowed to talk about that? Because I could answer that.
Mr. Mayor, council members, that question should better be posed by one of the additional 4 council members, just pursuant to the FPPC letter.
Okay, you think I'd be treading on
Yes.
dangerous ground if I answered that question?
Yes.
And if I said something historically about the agreement, would that also be treading?
Again, based on the FPPC letter, it's wise just to avoid any conversation about that issue. I'm sure that will be asked by another council member.
Okay, so hopefully somebody else can answer that for you. Unfortunately, I can't. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right. I'll try to be brief. Mr. O'Connor, thank you for your comments. As Dr. Gardner said, if any of you ever see a facial expression to which you may not have likings, it's because at times I find things humorous, although they're not in nature. For instance, I find what Mr. Robinson has said in his ballot statement utterly
Let's keep it on topic.
It is on topic. It is laughable.
It's agenda item.
I wouldn't be, no, I'm referring to the comment on Mr. Robinson's ballot statement. It would be funny if it were not serious.
Agenda item 15.
Given it's a serious matter, it's not funny, but sometimes you wouldn't know how to react. And you were right on everything you said, as far as how ridiculous those statements are. Mr. Johnson, Mr. Richardson, given that the Village Pond Park is now decoupled, can I beg of you, can I look to you to please address Mr. Johnson's comments? Because I know you can do a lot more competently than I can. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sure. Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, I think we're going to play a tag team here. That's what we were talking about. Fundamentally, I think in response to what is occurring relative to Village Pond Park, I want to update the council as well as the community as it relates to the construction of improvements at Village Pond Park. I believe Mr. Richardson will discuss the issue relative to shared costs. Pursuant to City Council direction, as was alluded to by Mr. Johnson, we did send a letter to the Lake Forest Community Association about their desire to join us in approving the plans and specifications so we can start the improvements to that park. Pursuant to council direction, also yesterday I authorized on the city's website the release of the plans and specifications to go out to bid for the project. And today we also received, pursuant to the deadline that we identified in our initial letter and subsequent correspondence with the association, that they have conceptually approved the plans for the improvement to the park. So the whole process and the project itself is now actually moving forward. We're going to receive those bids and negotiate and award a contract recommending that to the council in the winter of 2016. In 17, we would be moving forward with the actual construction, and hopefully by the end of 17, early into 18, we'll have those improvements finished. So based on our exchange of requests with the association, the project's now moving forward.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Just one additional item, the shared improvement costs.
Yes,
is
in
also
fact, yes.
inquired into. Those are being negotiated between the parties, but that negotiation will not delay in any way the city's proceeding with the bids and then with construction of Village Pond Park.
All right, so we are proceeding as swiftly as we would have otherwise with the design, construction, cleanup, whatever. All right, thank you both.
Mr. Mayor, I'm excited about what's going forth at Village Pond Park. It's been long overdue, but the fact is that it wasn't on all our hands. But I am excited. But back to Randy's notion, the water quality still is right now is in negotiation with what they're going to pay, and that. So that's something that's moving forward. The Lake Forest Elementary School meeting was a PTA meeting, and they were astonished and taken back by Councilman Adam Nick's arrival there. But it was a PTA meeting to raise money for the school, not to talk about the triggers, not to talk about the mites. And the fact is, vector control has been out there for 2 weeks. No targeted vector from the Vector Control Agency was found there, so it's not a vector problem, but they were doing a public service for the community of Lake Forest and being there and setting traps and trying to find out and helping Orange County Health Department find out what was the problem and what was causing these things. So it was something that was worked out, but the PTA meeting went on without it being hijacked by anybody, and they were very taken back by the people that came and thought that they were going to talk about the problem of a rash. And so That's what was said there, so.
That is...
Okay, I think we have that on the agenda later tonight, so...
I need to...
I never said.
No, you said I
Let's
tried...
go
let's go to the
implied
consent
that I
calendar.
tried to
Councilman
hijack...
Nick, Jim was
tried
inviting me
to-
for a picture, but.
Hold on, everyone, this
You
is on the
said that I
agenda.
tried to hijack
This
it.
is
I
on the
just-
agenda on
Andrew.
number 14.
He invoked my name, and he said that I tried to hijack it, that I wasn't welcome there, that it wasn't noticed. Actually, that is none of that is true. They noticed the public, and I, as a member of the public, not necessarily in the council capacity, was there. Number one. Number two, I did not even ask one single question. I observed, I learned, so I learned how to respond to my constituents. I did have a couple of questions, but I asked them through parents. I did not speak a word myself. And I can tell you about a dozen, if not more, parents thanked me for being there. So my being there, if anything, was a good thing. I did not hijack anything. I was welcomed there. I was thanked, and it was noticed to us as members of the public, as people. Never mind that rhetoric you just heard. Thank you.
All right, let's move on with the consent calendar, agenda item number 3.
Agenda item 3, certification of warrant register submitted by Deputy City Manager, Director of Finance.
I'll hear any motions.
Yep, a move, warrant registry.
I'll second. Please cast your votes. I think you have to hit your button and vote.
Councilmember Robinson, I'm also not registering a vote for you. Thank you. That motion passes unanimously.
Which leads us to the consent calendar items 4 to 12.
Yeah, I beg your pardon, I was worried that Mr. Sprague went to the bathroom and had a heart attack or something. So I wanted, and when I suddenly thought of that, I wanted the sheriff to go there, and
Perfectly fine.
that's why I left.
Has the public pulled any items?
There's been no request from the public.
Move consent calendar.
Well, I'll pull 10.
Do you want to just,
Pull number 6.
And, okay. And I'll move everything but 6 and 10.
do you want to just register a vote, a different vote than your others on 10?
No, simply to do that.
Just, you're going to vote no on 10,
Yeah.
and then anyone else? I think we can just
I'm
go.
recusing myself on item 6. One of the ADA ramps is within 500 feet of property that I own.
I'll pull 6.
All right, we'll pull 6.
Andrew, so number 10, I'm a no on that. How did we do that?
Okay, so we'll vote on everything but 6,
And 10?
and we have registered 2 no votes for 10. All right, cast your votes.
I beg your pardon, I don't have the mover and second for this, if you could clarify.
I moved.
I'll second.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously.
So item number 6.
Agenda item 6, First Amendment to Agreement with Harrison Associates for ADA Access Ramp Improvement Project Phase 10, submitted by Director of Public Works City Engineer and removed from the consent calendar by Mayor Pro Tem Voights.
Yep, a few weeks ago, I was driving through Mission Viejo with Mayor Hamilton, and as we were driving back, or it was with my daughter, and as we were driving back from a soccer practice in Mission Viejo, I was noticing, as we were driving through the neighborhood from the elementary school that she practiced at, all the corners that did not have ADA wheelchair ramps, stroller wheelchair ramps in Mission Viejo. And I just got to say that I want to commend our Public Works Director in identifying the locations where we still need the few that we need, but the high standard that we have here in Lake Forest. And I consider Mission Viejo a well-run city, but I was astonished to see, because as I drove back through Mission Viejo, I tried to check in other neighborhoods, and there was a lot of neighborhoods that did not have curb cutouts for wheelchairs and strollers. And so I just want to commend our Public Works Director, and thank you so much for identifying those that are still remaining. Thank you. I move the item.
Do Yeah, and before you do, I might be, I didn't think I was within 500 feet. I'm not.
No, we did a GIS search regarding all council members' properties, and you are not.
Okay, all right. Thank you for clarification. I didn't think I was, but I just want to make sure.
I'll move item 6.
I'll second. All right, Dr. Gardner, cast your votes.
That motion carries with Councilmember Robinson abstained. Recused. Recused.
Which leads us to the discussion action items, agenda item number 13.
Agenda item 13, ordinance regarding the naming of public streets and facilities, submitted by city attorney.
And if anyone wants the staff report, I guess there is a short, brief staff report. I think we've had this agenda item in the past, so are you good to vote? Anyone want to hear the staff report? All right. I'll entertain motions.
I'll move item number 13.
Second.
If you can cast your votes.
Mayor, I apologize. There is public comment regarding this item.
Okay, we need to hear the public speakers.
Randy Johnson.
Welcome again.
Hello again, Mayor. Randy Johnson from Lake Forest. And I stood before you back on, what was it, August 2nd, when you first discussed this particular item. Mr. Robinson is the one who introduced it. And so now we're going to vote on it tonight. And what we're going to do is basically overturn the previous council's decision not to name streets or parks or facilities or property owned by the city after city employees. That's what they said. Has anybody researched that and asked why? Has anybody looked into it at all? Has anybody ever heard of anything called conflict of interest? Does that ring a bell with anybody? Ethics? Hello? You know, there is an ethics code for the city, right? I mean, this obviously opens up opportunities for public unions to reward certain politicians for giving them favorite, you know, having streets named after them or having parks named after them. I mean, you know, public unions are very strong. You know, they endorse candidates. Candidates get elected based upon their endorsements. You know, 3 of you received $15,000 from the police union for that anti-recall newspaper that many people called racist. So you've already benefited from it. Gosh, if I was in your place, I guess I'd vote for this too. You've already received money from them. Why wouldn't you vote for it? All 3 of you, of course, you voted for the big police budget contract increase back in 2015. You didn't even bat an eyelash. Didn't even second guess it. Didn't want an ad hoc committee in the council to review the contract to see if there's any cost savings opportunities. Isn't that strange? And now you want to name streets and parkway or parks. You know, what about Matthew Sampson, poor Matthew Sampson, specialist, U.S. Army, who lost his life in 2009 in Afghanistan from Lake Forest? I haven't even heard his name mentioned up here in the dais. Do you know who he is? Have you ever heard of him before? Have you ever mentioned his name before, Mr. Robinson, on the dais? Have you ever cried for him, sir? Have you ever cried for him? I'm a veteran from the armed forces. Have you ever cried on the dais on behalf of Specialist Matthew Sampson? Yes or no?
Please don't badger. That's not your role.
This upsets me.
Do not badger us.
This is a conflict of interest, and especially with your motives with the home developers and everything else, everybody should look on this with a jaundiced eye. And they should question this. Why is he doing this? Right before an election. Isn't that strange after he received $15,000 from the police union? I've got nothing against the police, by the way. Nothing. Or the fire department or anything else. You know, if my mailman, he brings medicine to me to keep me alive. He's a hero to me, my mailman. If he got hit by a car...
Thank you for your comments.
I wouldn't want to park named after him either.
So just for the public's benefit, the only case that we can name any public facilities or streets or anything to that effect is for first responders who have lost their lives in the line of duty. That's the only time we can do that. That's what this resolution is. I can read from the resolution. City Council shall not name any public or private street after any city official or employee, whether living or deceased, with the exception of the following individuals who lose their lives in the line of duty: emergency response responders, as that term is defined in Section 2 of the Homeland Security Act, members of the United States military, and similar public safety officers. So they have to die to be able to get a name on their street or public facility. So with that, if there's any other comments?
I got to take a suggestion. I never received any $15,000 from any union at all, so that I don't know where you're coming up with that, so it's not on my 460s.
All right, with that, let's cast our votes.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a motion.
I take a motion
All right, sorry.
to approve.
And I'll second. No,
Item
I think we had a motion previously. I think the two of you?
No, you asked if we could go ahead. I said, sure.
Oh, okay,
I didn't actually
okay.
make a motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Councilmember Nick, I'm not showing that you've voted. Thank you. That motion passes unanimously.
Which leads us to agenda item 14.
Agenda item 14, city representation on the Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control Board of Trustees. Discussion of whether to agendize the matter for action at a future meeting, submitted by city clerk.
So I think whoever was the two, I guess, your chance now to see if we want to vote on this item.
Okay, thank you. I'll begin since I was one of the people who asked for the item to appear. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember President Carter. He had a brother, Billy, I think his name was. Billy had Billy Beer. And Billy was a constant source of embarrassment to President Carter. Scott Voigt occupies that role in my life. He's a constant source of embarrassment to me.
You know, I think our guiding principles, leadership principles, if you allow me to
No, it's okay.
read from
the
them.
character of the councilman shows himself.
Treat everyone with respect. If you don't want to follow the leadership principles, then
I don't think that was treating him disrespectfully.
I
was saying
I'd like
something
to
that's
point of order
not very nice.
In fact, city attorney, can there even be a vote on with the removal of the vector control?
Mr. Mayor, council members, the vote tonight is whether to agendize for a future council meeting a removal from vector control. There is an Attorney General's opinion that speaks to a council's ability to remove a vector control appointee and concludes that the council doesn't have authority to unilaterally take that action. However, there is certainly the opportunity for discussion tonight about those issues. But again, the unilateral action to remove is only in the hands of vector control themselves. It's a two-year appointment, I believe. A four-year appointment. Yeah.
So one other item from the leadership principles, this is 1.5, refrain from abusive conduct, personal charges, or verbal attacks upon the character, motives, ethics, morals, or comments of other members of the council, commissions, committees, staff, or the public.
Yeah, I don't, you'd have to, I didn't catch anything in there that I thought I was violating. We've seen, for example, Mr. Voigt's outburst tonight saying that Councilman Adam Nick hijacked a meeting that he never even spoke at. So I don't know how he hijacked a meeting he never even spoke at. But it's that kind of conduct that that's a source of disturbance to me. Several weeks ago, we had the parade committee got their recognition, and we signed documents for it. And because I'm on the parade committee, I've been on it for 10 years, and I know many of those people, I signed my signature with kind of like a big I, Jim, just to say, hey, you're my buddy, I know you, you know me. Just a little unusual. Usually I don't.
Let's try and keep on topic. The
No, it is on
agenda item
topic.
says city representation on the Orange County mosquito.
Yeah,
and vector
okay, I'll go faster.
So let's-
Mr. Voits thought I was...
What is it that he's doing on the mosquito and vector control? I mean, we could talk all night about this person did this person did that. Let's get the city's business done. What is it? How does this relate to the mosquito and vector
I understand
control?
he's your friend and you want to
No,
minimize
no.
the damage, so
No.
I'll go right to
I want to
vector
try and stay
control.
on topic.
I'll go right to vector control. Okay, vector control. These are the minutes of vector control, right? This is just pulling these out at random. February. Scott Voigt shows up, gets his $100 at roll call, stays for the first item, then he's gone. February. Look at it if you want. December. Shows up for roll call, doesn't even stay for an item, then he's gone. January doesn't even show up at all. Well, he missed his $100 that night. So, April shows up for roll call, then he's gone. May gets his $100 for roll call, stayed for two items that day, and then he's gone. So, there's a pattern here of that disturbs me in several ways. Number one, it reflects badly on our city. That we have he's there as our representative, this is our Lake Forest representative, and he's, boom, hitting the road. I don't think that speaks well to the city. That embarrasses me as a representative of the city. Probably equally important, he's not doing the job that's being asked of him, which is to attend the meeting. I go to the library committee meetings. There's nothing worse on earth than sitting through a library committee meeting, and it ends at 5 o'clock in the middle of Santa Ana. I'm stuck in rush hour traffic, and I go and, I sit there and I listen. I got to go Thursday, I think, again. So he's not doing the job that he was supposed to do. Now, maybe if I switch with him and he were on the library committee, it wouldn't matter if he left the library committee early. But vector control is a pretty important thing. We got, for example, Lake Forest Elementary. Something's breaking out there. We've got mosquitoes. We've got aerial spraying. Vector control is a pretty serious thing. So I believe he's abrogating his duties to the citizens by missing so much of the meeting. And then I believe he's embarrassing us by not representing. So I believe we should ask him to step down and somebody else should be appointed.
Do we have any public speakers?
Sherry Anderson.
Welcome again.
Thank you. Unlike Councilman Voits, I think it is very important. I'm concerned because I live off Pittsford. My neighbors and I walk our dogs in the park. I'm concerned about the Lake Forest children, pets, and wildlife. The symptoms of the kids are suffering, look, and sound horrible. I don't know what's going on with the rabbits and the wildlife, but on the news, and you weren't at the meeting, so you probably don't know this, they were talking about possibly spraying and killing the rabbits. I'm concerned about our wildlife. And especially when we turn our wildlife and our animals over to the Orange County, the county does such a horrible job now with our pets and our wildlife, and that's a big concern. Councilman Voits, you are paid vector representative. I was at the council meeting when you took the position from a highly qualified resident, one that actually attended the meeting at Lake Forest Elementary because of his concern. I understand you miss 20% of the meetings or you leave early. I would like someone from the city to represent our needs. I mean, I really would like you to just step down because you're not doing the job. I would like to know what the county sprayed in the school and on the field? Is it really safe for children, pets, and wildlife? Do you know what the city is doing about it? There's a lot I don't know. Is there someone in our city that's working on behalf of us, representing us to the county, to the school, to the residents? Or is the county completely in control? Mr. Voights, why don't you have some integrity, step down? Let's get somebody that is concerned. We had every news station from LA down here. They obviously think it's important. The parents are concerned. They think it's important. It's my neighborhood. I think it's important. And you're just blowing it off. And I really don't know of any background you have in Vector at all to even be qualified to have the position. So I recommend highly that you step down and we get somebody that, especially now, to handle this for us.
Thank you for your comments.
There have been no further requests.
All right, I guess we'll, if you have a motion,
Well,
do you have any motion to agendize?
there's really nothing more I can say to add to what Dr. Garner said, so it'll be just a reiteration of what Jim said.
So you have a motion?
As such, I'll move to agendize this item for a, I don't really see why we need to re-agendize it, but I move to re-agendize this item, hopefully to next time, so we can, at that point, take a vote to remove, as ceremonial as it may be, to remove Mr. Voights from the Vector Board. So that is my move. That is my motion.
We have a motion and,
I'll second.
second?
And before we...
Discussion?
I actually would like to say that I was sick in January, and I left 2 council committee meetings early. Vector Control showed up at the behoove and to make sure that there was no vector-targeted insects or animals around Lake Forest Elementary School or in Pittsburgh Park. They put out traps. I was there with the head scientist of Vector Control and Jared, the actual communication director that was on all those news stations. Jared was there with me for Channel 11, Channel 5, and Channel 7. I was in the background. I didn't speak because it was Jared that was going to give the scientific facts of what was being looked for. Nothing was found in vector traps, and they tracked all around. And Sherry, I did ask about the animals. There was talk about the rabbits. Vector would not, they were recommending to the health department, if it was found, they could feed the rabbits a grain that had almost like a advantage built inside the grain, so it wouldn't kill the rabbits or the rats that in the area, because if it was a rabbit or rat-borne virus, they didn't want to kill the rats and have the rats dead, because that would have bred more of whatever was there, and then they would have left and found no new hosts, which would have been just catastrophic. They did not find anything in any of their traps, and so it's still, when no one knows what it was to this point, but to the point that Vector Control was out there as a public service to the community. They did put out traps for 2 weeks in a row. It was not Vector Control that sprayed anything on the campus, and so there was an insecticide sprayed throughout the campus. That was hired by Saddleback Unified School District to a private contractor that came out without Vector's knowledge, because Vector's was even upset because they would have liked to have had the traps out a few days so they could have tried to identify if there was any parasites or mites. They were thinking about rabbit mites possibly, but there is nothing that was found alive at Lake Forest Elementary School. And so I call the vote.
Yeah, I just want to correct for the record, Mr. Voigt says he left early on only 3 occasions. I have 4 meetings here in which you left early. Here's the minutes. Here's the minutes. And that doesn't include the August meeting, which is the meeting from which someone came here at the City Council during public comments and informed him of him leaving early. That was August. So we know at least 5 times that he left early.
I missed January meeting. I was sick. And I
5 times, not 3 times.
I call the vote. Thank you. I'll check the net. Thank you.
I just, this agenda item, we can't remove him, so I'm not sure, we cannot...
We can recommend in 540 to remove him. We can do that, and then hope, as Mr. Anderson said, he has the integrity to resign.
All right, we'll cast our votes.
That motion fails with Councilmember Robinson, Mayor Pro Tem Voight, and Mayor Hamilton opposed.
All right. Do I need to call a recess? Because we are trying to run a meeting here, and there's a lot of comments and things going on, so let's be respectful.
I think there's a lesson there, Mr. Mayor, in terms of audience reaction to the kind of meeting you're trying to run.
Mayor, can I ask you a question? Help me understand what you think respect is. Tell me what respect
Let's go to agenda item 15.
Agenda item 15, consideration of potential censure of Councilmember Robinson, discussion of whether to agendize the matter for action at a future meeting submitted by City Clerk.
Do you have public comments?
I thought I'd allow somebody to kind of do their staff report first, and then we'll go to public comments. Although I don't think staff is going to do that, so are you going to lead us off?
Well, if there are no public comments, I can't imagine there would be a staff report on this. This is something...
No, there is no staff report because it's a minority consensus.
Right.
So one of you can speak.
I didn't imagine there would be a staff report. It's a minority consensus. Andrew knows that. What can I say that has not been said? I am just very disappointed that Dwight chose to assert in his ballot statement that now is going to be, or has been seen actually already, by every single voter in Lake Forest. This is a blatant attempt to defraud people. I personally take exception to that. This is what I'll say would be a reiteration of what has already been said, but I guess I must say it given that Dr. Garner and I put this on the agenda. He doesn't have a business in Lake Forest with 100 employees. The business for which he works, which was founded back in the 1950s before he and I were born, is in Los Angeles County. It has about 100 or so employees, although they're not really employees. Most of them are contractors, is how I understand it. Contractors or employees, it doesn't matter. That business is not in Lake Forest. The business that is in Lake Forest, to which he refers, is a home-based business with 2 employees. I assume one of them is him, and then the other is the other. As far as the dog park and the sports park, he does not lie on those. He was the mayor when the dog park was opened and when the sports park was opened. He's actually correct on that. The only thing is, I don't know what the insinuation is for somebody who reads this, because he and I had nothing to do with either of those. We got elected together. He had as much to do with the sports park as I did, which is nothing, not a zilch. And yet, I remember vividly that he stood there, opened his arms like this, the Orange County Register, with which I know he has ties. With the editorial board, he has ties. Took his picture and ran an article. So I just think that he was truthful when he said several years ago, I promised myself that I would give you a sports park with no tax dollars. Here we are today with the sports park. We had nothing to do with it, neither he nor I, nor Scott Voice for that matter. The dog park, the council had nothing to do with. It was the staff, and by significant help from Mr. Holtzclaw, Bob Holtzclaw, who may or may not be here in the crowd. Actually, he is in the back. With help from then community activist Jim Gardner, now Councilman Mr. Gardner. The council, to the best of my knowledge, had nothing to do with it. Again, it was the staff, it was Jim Gardner and Bob Holtzclaw. As far as the paying off the pension liabilities, we had the money, we paid it off. Not a big deal. Don't let that, we did not invent the money, we did not earn the money, it's tax dollars, it's developer fees, nothing to it. With all the money we have today in the bank, you should have a senior center already, you should have a community center already. We are the only city in Orange County that rents the building in which the city hall is housed. That is a shame. They like to brag that they have $100 million in their bank account. So what? They did not earn it. They did not make it. It's developer fees. It's tax money. Government doesn't produce anything. Government just milks you and I.
All right, I think we're getting a little off topic. So
No, actually, I'm on topic.
bring us back.
I am here. I am
Talking about city halls.
I'm talking.
I don't know
no,
how that.
well, I'm talking about
is
the
that
fact that
anything?
we paid off pension liabilities. It's a great thing, but in fact, you and I had to do with that, Andrew, if you remember. You and I, and you should take credit for that, not him. Yeah, we have the highest cash reserves in history. He's right. Technically, he's correct. That has been at the expense of you people having, us people having not a lot of things that other people have in other cities in Orange County. Some of those cities are half of our size. Bunch of zeros in the bank account doesn't do good if you don't have the infrastructure, and we don't. We're paying $1 million in rent every year. Your money, my money, being wasted. Let's see. Lake Forest property values increased $1 billion. That is absolutely a meaningless number. That is absolutely a meaningless number. $1 billion or $1 trillion. That is merely the assessed taxable value of the properties. And that has to do with the new construction. Again, there is no ingenuity. Homes get built, assessed values are placed, assessed value goes up, the tax base goes up. Nothing to it. Simple as that. So far, there is no accomplishment on the part of Dwight Robinson in his ballot statement. But with the exception of the business thing, which he claims he has 100 employees in Lake Forest, everything else is everything else. As far as I maintain our safest cities rating by continuing to contract with the Orange County Sheriff's Department. In my opinion, he is signaling the Orange County Sheriff Department that so long as he is on the council, they will enjoy getting their contract rubber stamped. To me, nobody would do that. No businessman would do that. No good-minded person would do that. You would never commit to something years in advance when you don't have to commit to it. I'm not going to tell the Orange County Sheriff Department that I'm going to rubber stamp their contract for years to come. I'm going to try to negotiate every single year. I may not be successful, but I'm not going to give them the clear signal that I'm going to rubber stamp their contracts. That's what he's saying here. I will maintain our safest cities rating by continuing the contract with the Orange County Sheriffs. You may think we don't have a choice. We don't know that. We could explore, we could have a joint part of police force between Michigan, Laguna Hills, etc. We could contract with Irvine, we could contract with Placentia. We could have our own police department. None of these were looked into because they would not let us look into it. Or we could maybe get a better pricing from the Orange County Sheriff Department, with whom I am happy to some extent. But that's not the point. The point is, he promised you that he would treat your money as his own. He has not. I promise you that. Nobody in the right mind would commit $1 million of his own money, up to $1 million of his own money, to another institution, in this case the county, to build a building in which he will have no ownership. You and I will have no ownership in this $35 million building, and yet we are putting 2, 3, 4% of the cost of that infrastructure. Nobody would be dumb enough to do that with his own money. And if you don't do it with your own money, you shouldn't do it with your tax money. In fact, you should be even more careful with other people's money. I really take exception to that. I've been endorsed by Supervisors Todd Spitzer and Lisa Bartlett. I wasn't endorsed by them because I did not go along with the county thing. I did get a call. I was told that I was not a team player. I swear to you, I said to them, I am a team player, except you're not my team. My team are the people of Lake Forest. And that was a brief conversation. And for me to have a brief conversation, that means a lot, because it takes me 5 minutes to say hello.
Okay, let's. Can you wrap this up? I mean,
No,
talking these stories about meeting people and not being on the team, and this is all about the agenda item.
Like I said, it takes me 5 minutes to say
Potential
hello,
censure.
so cut me some slack here. It takes me 5 minutes to say hello. I'm just warming up. So I didn't get that endorsement, because that would have cost me $1 million of your money. It's too much. I don't buy endorsements. I earn them. And if I don't get them, I don't get them. You're the only one whose endorsement means anything to me, means the world to me. Nobody else's, no other politician's endorsement means anything to me anyway.
Okay, you're talking about Councilmember Robinson.
Well, I'm talking about his bad statement.
Okay, but you're talking about you. You're talking about
No.
your endorsements, and you don't pay people.
Well, I said that as a matter of contrast, Andrew. No,
If you want to talk about the agenda topic, then go for it.
Let me go back to that.
Okay.
I'll partner with them to eliminate Melrose in Footy Ranch, just like we have done in Portola Hills. Everybody in this room knows no such thing happened. The Portola Hills, along with 8 other districts, the Melrose was not eliminated. It was retired. It was retired because the bonds had been fully paid, and some. And in fact, people paid more than they were supposed to pay, so they're going to get a tax credit next year on their tax bill. So nothing was eliminated, for God's sake. Now, he said that his ballot statement was limited to 200 words. That is correct. But nobody said the 200 words needs to be lies. You can still be accurate in your 200 words.
All right, we will call recess if there's more outbursts. Okay. All right, we're taking a recess.
Are you serious?
All right, so we'll bring it back to the session here. And as you're taking your seats, I'll just remind that the council has unanimously adopted rules. That means each and every one of us have approved these rules of decorum.
Please take your order.
All right, well, we can just wait until the crowd... All right, the council has unanimously adopted rules of decorum, which are found in council policies and the Lake Forest Municipal Code. These rules allow for applause, prohibit any other form of interruption. Again, we unanimously voted on this item at the first council meeting in March 2016, just this year. If there are further interruptions, I'll call for another recess. If after that recess individuals continue to impermissibly interrupt the meeting, they will be warned, and a subsequent interruption will result in a removal from the meeting by our sheriff. This is all within our municipal code and council policies, which we, again, all unanimously, each and every one of us, voted for them. This is a business meeting, and we're here to get the city's business done.
Yeah, I don't consider what the people are doing there when they laugh and they talk. I don't consider that to be an interruption or disruptive. So understand that's what the code says, but that's your interpretation of the code. That's not. I don't interpret it that way.
We could ask the city attorney. Is the rules allow for applause, or prohibit any other form of interruption? Is that exactly what it says?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have them in front of me right now, but based on what you just read, I believe it says that applause is permitted, any other disruptions are not permitted. In addition, the municipal code, section 2.04.030, which was also referenced in the policy, prohibits any disruptions of meetings and actually makes that a misdemeanor. The council did approve applause, but did prohibit all other forms of disruption in their policy.
Do you consider somebody's making a comment, wow, in the back of the room, you consider that having disrupted the meeting?
Pursuant to council policy, the rule is that the only disruptions of the business meeting are applause. And so, again, as the council laid it out, the only verbal interjections that would be permitted would be those from the microphone.
So anybody who speaks out there and it's audible to us up here is disrupting and guilty of a misdemeanor?
Potentially after the warnings and recesses. That's just council policy.
I hope the sheriff has got his code book with him.
You know, this is something that you were there. We talked about this.
I think you're much too sensitive. I don't consider what I've heard.
These are the rules we discussed.
No, this is your interpretation.
They were the rules that we discussed.
This is your interpretation.
I remember the meeting.
I understand.
If you want to change the rules, we can change them. You can agendize changing the rules.
Do it.
No, I believe we should stop disruptions. What I'm saying is, what these people are doing here are not disruptions.
We've talked about it at the meeting. I remember. We said applause was the only item.
Oh, pause. 5 minutes. Sheriff, would you please arrest that woman and give her a misdemeanor ticket? I heard it, and it disrupted my train of thought. Oh, somebody laughed. Son of a gun. You see what I mean? You can carry it too far. I think you're carrying it too far.
All right.
So, if there are further interruptions, I'll call for another recess. If after that recess, individuals continue to impermissibly interrupt the meeting, they will be warned, and a subsequent interruption will result in removal from the meeting by the sheriff.
All right, now I'm forced to start from the very beginning. Of course not. All right. I'll leave. Okay, great. Well, not so great, but all right, I was here. I will partner with them to eliminate Melrose and Footy Ranch, just as we've done in Portola Hills. We know it wasn't done in Portola Hills. we cannot eliminate anything for Teen Ranch. We can't. Those bonds have been issued, they need to be served. One thing that can happen is they can maybe not be renewed if the financial obligation has been met, but that again is not a decision the council can make, either in an individual capacity or as a whole. We have nothing to do with that. I'll prioritize, I can't even pronounce it, as funny as it is. I will prioritize completing Village Pond Park. Those who know about this mess know who did what. Or actually, they don't, because they kept it under. This was a closed-door issue for the longest time. I had to actually look to, given that Jim was conflicted out, I had to really press upon Dwight and look to him to second me so that we could, in fact, prioritize it. So he said something here, but I followed up on it. I had to follow up on it, just like his traffic commission. He promised it 4 years ago. He wouldn't do anything about it. I introduced it finally, and then he voted it down. 6 promises he made. 6 promises he made. Did not follow through on any of them, and on 2 or 3 of them, he voted them down when I followed through. I promised 7 4 years ago, this month or last month, 4 years ago. I either delivered every one of the 7 or tried to deliver, and they voted me down. So the record speaks for itself. Don't be hoodwinked by shenanigans and nonsense. I will work to reduce fees for all residents. I remember vividly in 2013, I think it was, that I pleaded to the rest of the council then to not establish rates and fees for the use of the sports park, at least for the residents of Lake Forest. I lost 41 on that. So the very first time that the council, Dwight and I, and the rest of the council, which was Peter, Kathy, and Scott, the very first time this council had the chance to establish fees, they actually voted to establish fees. And I lost on that vote 4-1. This is before Jim was here. So I will reduce fees. Every time they got the chance, they established it, and I lost. I also lost on, I wanted administrative fees reduced for Lake Forest residents.
All right, I think we're getting off topic again.
I lost on that, too.
If you want to talk about Councilmember Robinson, go for it.
Yeah, Councilman Robinson voted for the fee, and I said no, and I lost on that. So it's all on my website. That's
All right.
about it.
Do we have any public speakers?
Randy Johnson, followed by Sherry Anderson.
I just want to quickly say, as one of the speakers is coming forward, that Dwight is upset with me. I tried to ask him why he was upset with me at the break. He wouldn't tell me. I don't know why he's upset with me. I'm being factual. I'm just trying to serve you people. And I'm disappointed in him. I'm not upset with him. I'm disappointed in him. He's upset with me. I don't understand it. I really don't. I told him, I said, please tell me if I'm saying something wrong. Tell me if I'm lying. Tell me something. He wouldn't. He wouldn't speak to me. He said he's going to bury me. So, he's going to bury me. I still don't understand what I'm doing wrong. I'm just trying to make sure that people know what is true and what is not. And this whole thing is just not true. Most of it is not. Thank you.
Welcome again.
Hello, Mayor, Council, Randy Johnson from Lake Forest. And, it wasn't long ago I was standing before you at the podium here. I think all of you were here. Back on March 3rd, 2015. and we had another ethics discussion. And, I'm a big fan of ethics discussions, by the way. I love them on political boards. I don't see them that often, and I've had I've really had a treat here. I've had 2, like, in the last, 18 months in Lake Forest. And as long as it's not frivolous, I support it, okay? And I'm going to tell Mr. Robinson pretty much what I told Mr. Nick back on the 3rd of March of 2015.
If you can address your comments to the council.
Oh, okay. To the council? You mean, I can't, what do you mean? You are all council.
Just address us.
Okay. So anyway, my point here is that this is a very unique and sensitive item. I'm not here to kick Mr. Robinson at all, Mayor. I'm not. I'd never kick a man when he's down. Okay? And, but the thing is that when it comes to ballot statements, it's really, really, really sensitive information because, we're talking about the electoral system here. People read those ballots, and a lot of times that's all they know about the candidate. They read that and say, oh, he did this or he did that. Oh, that's wonderful. I'll vote for him. So you have to be careful when you do these things. You have to make sure you put down accurate information. It's honest information that the voters can read. This goes out to all the voters. Most of Lake Forest doesn't even show up to these meetings. All they know is what they read. So these are really, really important documents. So you have to take a lot of caution when you fill them out. I mean, that's just common sense. I shouldn't have to tell a politician that. And when I read what he puts down here, when I first read this, before anybody talked about it, business owner in town and employs 100 Southern Californians. Well, the first thing came to my mind, and I'm not an idiot, okay? I'm not a genius, but I'm not an idiot. And the first thing that came to my mind, oh, he owns a business here in Lake Forest and he employs 100 people. I didn't know about that. And then people came out later and said, it's not true at all. He doesn't own a business that employs 100 people in Lake Forest. It's not true. And then, I started putting 2 and 2 together. I said, wow, what's going on here? Why did he put that in the statement then? That is very misleading. And politicians should not put misleading statements in their ballot statements. They just shouldn't. We're talking about the sanctity of the electoral system here, folks. And people shouldn't be misled. The other thing I'm not really sure about, the Melrose, I don't know that much about it. I'd listened to Sherry Friedrich, whatever her name is here earlier. And as far as these operating expenses that pop up after the bonds are paid off, I haven't read the contract. I know nothing about it in this particular situation or what happened in Foothill Ranch or any of that stuff. But it strikes me as strange that a council person would have influence over a supervisor.
Thank you for your comments.
Sherry Anderson.
Welcome again.
I think I'm a typical Lake Forest resident up until this year, now that I know the councilman. I voted off of the literature, off of the ballot statement. I think it's really wrong for the councilman to lie to the citizens or the city to even let them lie to the citizens. If you had been truthful on your first ballot, on your past literature that I voted off of, we probably wouldn't have had the recall. Or now, with your ballot statement, if you do win, we'll probably have to go through another recall. And I know you're great concern about the cost of the recall to the city. Robinson, I didn't read the ballot statement yet.
You can address your comments to the council.
But I didn't hear anything from Councilman Nick about the statement saying that you voted for the 10-year Orange County Animal Care contract for the High Kill Shelter. I didn't hear you say you always voted for the developers and the city services that donate to you. I think that's important that people know that. And I didn't hear that at all. I do support the censure. I think it's absolutely wrong for you to lie to us. Anybody that votes against the censure, you're saying it's okay to lie, and I think that's absolutely wrong.
Thank you for your comments.
There have been no further requests.
Okay. Some people may feel that I said some things in my ballot statement that aren't true. I think they're all emphatically true. I spent a great deal of time putting this together, as each one of the candidates surely did. We are limited to 200 words, so we have to be very precise with what we write. We have to try to use punctuation to our advantage when we're communicating, so I'd be happy to go through some of the allegations that were made by Councilmember Nick, since that's really what we're dealing with here, is those particular those issues that he had. First of all, he said that I had nothing to do with the sports park. None of us had anything to do with the sports park, I think, including Councilmember Voights. That's a ridiculous statement. Of course, we all have something to do with everything that goes on in this city. We have the ability to affect budgets and make changes at any time on a wide variety of projects. So he may feel like he did nothing with respect to the sports park, but I definitely did. Did I say that I was the only person? I still have the speech. It's probably on some city DVD if you wanted to take a look at it, but I thanked every single former mayor that we've had, I think, in probably the last 20 years for their involvement. Did I take full credit? Absolutely not. In fact, I said that my part was small, but I was very specific, and I said, we could have screwed it up, but collectively, the council at the time made sure that we continued to plow forward, try to make sure that it got done in a reasonable amount of time. A lot of people would say that it came very, very late. But once we had a schedule, we stuck to it. In fact, I think we even got it done a little bit earlier from the time that I started and Councilmember Nick started. During that period, we got it done within that schedule that was put forth from day one. And I think we got it done a little bit earlier. We also got it done a little bit under budget. Again, we could have made changes. There's something called change orders if you've ever been involved in a project, and lots of cities have new councils that come in. They want to make changes to projects. They do it and they cause huge cost overruns. We didn't do that as a council. So I think that we played a vital role, and I think I did, with respect to the dog park. If you want to go back to the very first council meeting where I sat at this dais, actually in that chair right there, I agendized for a discussion on a dog park with the Park and Recs Commission. It hadn't happened before. And so I moved that we agendize a discussion about that. The following meeting we did, and then we put that on the agenda and then went through that process of looking at a variety of different facilities. I think Councilmember Gardner, who was a member of the public at the time, attended almost all of those, if not everyone. And I know that he played a major leadership role in that. But that's where that was. He was actually mistaken. Councilmember Nick was mistaken. I was not the mayor when the dog park opened. And when you read the ballot statement, what it says was, when we opened the dog park, comma, and we opened the dog park, comma, and sports park when I served as mayor. The comma, that's the punctuation. We opened the dog park. Well, he just said that I opened both, right? So I'm trying to explain to you how I, when I was the mayor, and I wasn't.
Let's not interrupt.
So I was trying to explain it in the shortest period of time, or shortest period of words that I possibly could, so that I could get as much in here as I could. I'm trying to be as truthful as I possibly can, but you might feel like I'm not. I'm doing my absolute best. He says it's not a big deal. That's an actual quote, not a big deal that we paid off our pension liability. We're the first city in the state of California to do it. I think it's a huge deal. We're taking a leadership position, trying to show other cities what they should be doing. There are cities in this county that are $1 billion behind. $1 billion. There are cities that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. We're the first city to pay it off. That's leadership. That's something that your children, your grandchildren are not going to be burdened with. And on top of that, we added an additional $1 million so that if there's actuarial changes, that there's money there to actually pay for those changes. When they say, you know what, you actually owe an extra $100,000, the returns weren't as good as we thought they were going to be. That's leadership. And I was part of that. Am I the only one? No. But I was part of that. He mentions no good business-minded person would work through the sheriff's contract. Wow, that particular discussion was enlightening to me with respect to the financial prowess of the council member to my right. When we had a member of the Sheriff's Department Finance Division come here and start talking to us about numbers. His numbers weren't even close. He didn't understand his own numbers. The Sheriff's Department is by far the cheapest way that we can provide high-quality police services in this community. You want to go with Placentia? That's one of the options there. Placentia's on the verge of bankruptcy. So, but if you want to go give it a try, I mean, heck, why not? You want to go with Irvine? About $150 per resident per capita more annually. You want to try that? Oh, let's just put together an RFP, right? We'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars putting together an RFP when we already know the answer. In fact, one of the subsequent council meetings, when we did discuss the police budget, he said, we really don't have a choice, but he wanted to move forward with an RFP process. Even when we know the outcome, we're going to spend the money, spend the staff time to do something that we already know what's going to happen. Then he says he doesn't buy endorsements. He threw that in at one point. He might not buy endorsements, but he's tried to buy off council members. And he's admitted it in the public, in the media, that he's offered cash to council members to do things for him. And they haven't done it. He said that he offered cash to council member McCullough.
No, don't say that.
You did. It's in print. I'm not saying
Don't interrupt. Don't interrupt.
He said he offered $40,000
Don't interrupt.
to Councilmember McCullough, and he offered $1,000 in cash to Councilmember, or to now Mayor Hamilton when he was running as a candidate. So he doesn't buy endorsements, but apparently he tries to buy off council members. Finally, he talks about fees for residents, and he's criticizing my votes on that. Let me explain that vote with respect to fees. He wanted to make sure that teams can use our sports facilities for free. Team sports that are monopolizing a public facility. Okay? These aren't individuals. These aren't charges for kids to go down slides. This isn't a charge for dads to throw a baseball on a diamond with their kids. These are sports teams, like adult softball leagues. He wanted them to be free. Well, you know what? The community doesn't get to use those fields on those particular nights when those leagues that are profit-driven leagues are using our facility. So of course we should be charging something, or at least I think so. Maybe he thinks that private companies should be able to use public facilities for free and turn a profit. I consider that a gift of public funds, but maybe he doesn't. Most recently, if you want to talk about fees, we were talking about sports park fees just a few months ago. And there was a motion and a second and almost a vote to charge fees for residents, and he was part of that. And before the vote was taken, with my mic off, but I think some people heard me and he even mentioned it, he thought we were going to have a 5-0 vote. And I said, you're not getting me. And to raise fees, you need a minimum of 4 votes. And I said, well, you're not getting me, but you can still get it done. He said, hold up. Explain what you want. And I said, I don't think that residents should have to pay a fee at all. And so what happened? The vote changed. So I believe that I've been very truthful in my statement here. You may disagree, but I believe I've been very truthful. I have no question about it. I stand behind everything that I've written. And on top of that, having a discussion about a ballot statement on an agenda item 5 weeks before an election is about as political as you can get. There's a process for challenging ballot statements. When they come out, there's a period of days where you can challenge it. And you know what? If it's illegal, what you wrote, if it can be proven to be an out-and-out lie, You can force candidates to actually change that. You can go to court to do it. It happens across Orange County every single election cycle. No one challenged my ballot statement. Not a single person. Councilmember Nick knew that they could be challenged because somebody challenged his. And so he made changes to it. He knew the process. But what he decided to do was make this a very political issue by putting it on an agenda 5 weeks before an election. And I think that speaks incredibly to his character.
I have a couple of comments.
Jim, before you, if you would allow me, given that he just talked about it.
No. Let's go with Councilman Gardner.
He invoked my name.
Yeah, you invoked his. We could be here all night. He said this. Oh, he said this. He said this. He said this.
So
let's go with Councilman Gardner.
But I do reserve the right to refute, to rebut, right, Andrew?
Well, then, I think I should be able to ask the city clerk why your ballot statement got changed.
Absolutely.
In fact,
I want to explain that. So let me go ahead and explain all that. Thank you, Jim. All right. As far as...
No, I think he's going first.
I thought you said I can go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, a couple of things. And thank you, whoever talked about the sanctity of the electoral process. That's important here. As far as this showing up late, it's late. It was on as soon as the agenda as was possible after the ballot statement came out. It's late, unfortunately, because it was delayed. So that wasn't his fault or my fault either. However many weeks, so 5 weeks, 7 weeks. You have trouble with math, like you're only out 3 times, but you're out 5 times or 3 times. That's why it's so late, is because you postponed it. That's why it's so late. I was hoping we would have talked about it earlier, but we didn't. Anyhow, all the comments you talked about, Mr. Robinson, in your discussions, I could spend more time than I want to going through them, but I won't, because those weren't the items that concerned me anyway. There are only 2 items on that ballot statement that I consider blatantly false. Some of them are misleading. Well, misleading politician, misleading. You kind of expect that, but I don't expect what I interpreted as falsehoods. For me, the 2 falsehoods are: I'm a business owner here in town and employ nearly 100 Southern Californians. I think Ms. Anderson raised that one, or was it Mr. Johnson? So to me, that says, yeah, I have 100 Lake Forest people that I'm putting. Now, you might go back and say, technically, with your comma, so technically, it may not be an outright lie. It's certainly grossly misleading, and personally, I don't like that kind of misleading. But it may not be a grossly. He is a business owner here in town, 2 people in that business, and he does employ nearly 100 Southern Californians. But I object to that, as grossly misleading. And the other one, I'll partner with them to eliminate Melrose and Foothill Ranch, just as we've done in Portola Hills. We've eliminated it. Him and the 3 of them, which is why I asked the tax collector, because who would know better than her what was going on there, and what was the word she used? It dissolved, I think was the word she said. It dissolved because they paid it off. So you didn't eliminate it. It's the good people of Portola Hills, by paying their dues, they eliminated it, and it got dissolved. Seems like you're trying to grandstand there for the Melrose, because that's a significant thing. So the rest of those I have no problem with. It's just politics. But those 2 I took exception to.
Okay. So, I just want to respond.
Yeah.
So my response to you comes first.
Well, first, I think I should...
There's been 2 different people taken on. I think we should allow him to rebut.
Wait a minute. No. What's fair is fair.
We've had 3 speakers so far. 2 have been against, and 1 have been for. So I'm trying to balance it.
Let me tell you how you balance it.
Okay. I'm choosing to go with Councilman Robinson.
I am in the queue to...
If you want to be mayor,
no, I
you
am
can
not,
take a vote.
No, you guys wouldn't let me be the mayor, because I would
We can take a vote. If you want to be the mayor,
Andrew, what
You
I'm
need to
trying
get
to
the
tell you
title.
is logically, rationally, to be fair. He said it, I said,
you went,
he said,
he went.
said. So,
We have one side here. we
Goes
have
back
another
to me
side
now.
here. We have one side here, so we should
okay.
have allow a
I
rebuttal
ran,
for that.
he ran. Who's next now? Come on. You're a CPA. You should do math. Easy. Come on.
We've had 2 arguments for censure. Let's do the math. One argument you made, and then Councilman Gardner had one. So that's 2. One from you and one from Councilman Gardner. That's 2. We've had 1 rebuttal. So, if we have 2 for censure and 1 against,
Andrew,
then
you can
the
play
next
with me as
turn
much as you
would
can.
be 2 against.
I don't get to respond.
I didn't say that. I'm trying to run the meeting, and I'm trying to get the next person to speak. We've had 2 for and 1 against. And so I thought, let's go
Yeah,
and
let's
be
go with the
fair and
President of
balance it out. Let's do the math, like you said.
Yeah, let's
That's
do the math.
2 for, 1 against. So now let's do 2
Math was
again.
never your strong suit, I know. Go, Dwight.
And likewise, I mean, at that particular sheriff's meeting, math wasn't your strong suit either. I think you recognized that pretty clearly. With respect to the business owner part, that's exactly what it was. You know, I'm explaining that I do own a business here in town. On average, over the last 5 years, it's done 7 figures in revenue, so I would consider that to be a pretty decent-sized business. It doesn't have a whole lot of employees, but it does a lot of revenue. And so, yes, I own a business here in town. I've explained numerous times from this dais that I own businesses in various parts of California. I've owned some in Stockton and Oakland, Los Angeles and Long Beach, and here in Lake Forest. I employ about 100 Southern Californians. I was very specific with that. I wanted people to understand that I don't employ 100 Lake Forest residents, and that's exactly what it is. The comma is trying to separate the two. Maybe I should have used a period, right? But I don't feel like I lied. I'm trying to explain in the shortest number of words what I feel is important for residents to know about me. I think it's important for them to know that I own a business here in town. I think it's important that I have to meet a payroll every single week and that I have about 100 employees. I think that's incredibly important. In fact, one of the comments that was made earlier was the vast majority are contract employees. They're not. They're actual employees. 4 years ago, there were a lot of contract employees. I think in my ballot statement, it might have said a few dozen direct employees and contract employees. Now I have very few contract employees. They're all actual employees. And there's also been question about whether I actually own the business or not, or I work for someone else. I'm the largest shareholder in the company, and I have been since I've been a council member, longer than I've been a council member. I'm the largest shareholder, and my father-in-law actually owns 0% of the business. So, I have 2 other partners. I own 49%, the other 2 own 41%, so that no one of us has a majority, and we have to work together to try to make any decisions. So there's been lots of criticism about that, but I've addressed that. If you don't like the answer, I understand, that's fine, but, that's the answer. With respect to the Melrose, Ms. Friedenrich mentioned, what could we do if there were operating costs? What should we do? She said, you should talk to the county, the decision makers, who are the Board of Supervisors. That's what I've done. There's a letter from Lisa Bartlett. For those that don't believe me, there's a letter from Lisa Bartlett that details, and she sent it to somebody in this room, but she details communication that I've had dating back to February of 2015. We've had residents come to this mic in the last 4 years and complain about Melrose and say, we want you to do something with it. Councilmember Nick has never responded. He loves responding to people who come to the public comment mic. He's never responded saying, I'm sorry, we can't help you. Heiko Peschel is one of those. Okay? He's come numerous times. So if he felt like there was nothing we could do, then why didn't he tell him? There's nothing that Councilmember Nick can do because he has horrible relationships with all of the county supervisors. I've chosen to try to foster a relationship with them because at times, the community, the residents that we serve, need us to talk to those that are in higher elected office than we are. And if we're not working with them, then what's the point? We have residents come here and ask us to do lots of different things, working with county supervisors, working with state legislators. They're asking about issues that can only be addressed by the state legislature. They can only be addressed by Congress. And that's what you should want your elected officials to do, is to be able to develop those relationships and help foster those. I've had residents in the community who've had issues, and I've helped direct them specifically with the offices of those in higher elected office who could address their problems. I do it on a regular basis. So that's exactly what I was doing. Now, did I have sole decision authority? Clearly not. That's a Board of Supervisors decision that was made.
It's not.
It is. They're the ones that took the vote. If they don't
not.
take the vote, it never happens. I don't know if you don't, if after 4 years up here, maybe you don't understand how government works, but if you don't take the vote, nothing happens. It continues going on. That's what happens. So those are the answers to it. Again, you might not like the answers, but I feel like I was incredibly truthful, and I hope that I can garner at least enough support to quash this. And on top of it, you can't even be having a discussion about ballot statements, because ballot statements, you can't censure over a ballot statement. It's that you don't understand how censure works. Because ballot statements are made by private
Let me just say-
individuals.
Don't interrupt.
Ballot statements are made by
Don't
private
interrupt.
individuals. They're not made by elected officials. Elected officials can produce ballot statements, but the statement is not an official word by a elected official. It's by a private citizen. And you can't censure a private citizen for their words or actions. So that's on top of everything else, in refuting everything that you've said. You really can't even be doing what you're doing, but, that's never stopped you before.
Councilman Nick.
Thank you. I still don't understand why Dwight is upset with me, but that aside, when I was a kid, I watched a movie I shouldn't have, and they were buried alive. I have always been very, very fearful of being buried alive. When Dwight told me that a few minutes ago, he did me a favor, because if this is buried alive, I am fine. Because I really thought, wow, I'm going to be buried alive. So he buried me right now. I'm not afraid of being buried alive anymore if this is what it is. That said, he essentially validated everything I said. As far as raising the fees, I said for residents. I did not say for profit-oriented businesses. I didn't want residents to pay fees. It's playing with words. As far as paying Kathy McCullough off, what happened is, as I told the reporter, she was an embarrassment to the process. She was. I spoke with Scott Smith, at the time our city attorney, and I said, Scott, there are a few months left. I would like to offer Kathy the remainder of her salary for the remainder of the year. This was early, or maybe spring of 2014. And I would like her to resign. Would that be okay? He said, that should be fine, but don't quote me on it yet. Let me do some due diligence, but that should be okay. So, as good as he is, and as methodical as I am with everything, we followed that up in writing. I said, it was nice meeting you, and it was nice seeing you for lunch, and for our discussion, you think that this is good? He said, yes. So I got together with Kathy McCullough, and I said, there are a few months left. I am willing to pay you the remainder of this year's worth of salaries if you just quit, because you're an embarrassment. I looked her in the eye and I said, you're an embarrassment to the process. Because of you, closed sessions take a lot longer than they should, and public sessions are just an embarrassment. you don't get much done because you just don't follow things, you don't understand things. And she wasn't happy. And that was the end of that. She did not take me up on my offer. About a week later, Scott Smith wrote me and said, Adam, I looked into it, and actually you cannot do that. That's against the law. I responded that, well, actually I did offer her. I jumped the gun. I'm impatient, that I got to tell you. I said I jumped the gun and offered her, but she refused anyway, so no harm done. And Scott and I left it at that. This was all in writing. Mrs. McCullough, and I told her that she was going to lose re-election. She loses re-election, and then she complains to the DA about me, trying to bribe her. So the DA calls me, and he came and paid me a visit at home. I told him exactly what I just told you. And he said, do you happen to have that email correspondence between you and the city attorney? I said, I do, but given that it's between me and the city attorney, it's confidential. Would it be okay if I give it to you? He said, well, yeah, given that, I'm part of the DA's office, it exonerates you, so no harm done. I said, okay. He said, can you get it to me tomorrow? I said, no, stay right here. Let's go to my computer, I'll print it for you. I have a very organized archive system. So I found it, printed it, handed it to him. It explained everything. The next day he calls me, said everything's good, it was nice meeting you, nothing to it. Later I learned that he had actually called Scott and verified Scott Smith. City attorney had verified everything. So between that written evidence and his conversation with Scott Smith, nothing, no charges, because there was no malintention here. So that's the bribe. Now his friend reported this in an article, and they said that I tried to bribe her. That was the bribe, everyone. As far as my numbers being off, my numbers were not off. Actually, it's on my website. What he had not taken into account was the unaccrued, was the unaccounted accrued actuarial liability, which Sherry called UAAL. The treasurer, a couple of hours ago, called UAAL. That's unfunded accrued actuarial liability. Once you take that into account, which I did take into account, my number was right on. Rounded to the nearest dollar, my number was right on. It was not $100+ off, like Dwight is saying. It's all on my website, www.adamnick.org. Go there. It's all organized. You don't need to read the whole thing. Just do a search for UAAL. Go to the subject, and you'll see the math. You'll see everything. You'll see the discussion. You'll see that he called me an imbecile. He called me a moron. You'll see all that. And there are links. I have a web page now on my website. Adam tells all, you be the judge. Adam tells all, you be the judge. There's more than 100+ links. There are more than 100+ links to various documents, articles, periodicals. You name it, it's there. Everything's factual. Everything is being supported. A good part of it, I have devoted it to Mr. Robinson himself. All you have to do is do a search for Dwight. Everything comes up. So that's as far as my number with the Orange County Sheriff versus the City of Irvine, etc. The numbers were on. Right on. We talked about me bribing Kathy McCullough. Let's call it a bribe. That makes him feel good. My numbers were not off. I did not try to bribe. Oh, by the way, he's right. Somebody objected to my ballot statement. I thought it was him. He told me it's not him. It was not him. He just told me that, and I believe him. If he says it was not him who objected to my ballot statement, I do believe Dwight. He wouldn't look me in the eye and lie to me. That leaves me to believe that it was Andrew who complained. If it weren't Dwight, and I'm certain it wasn't because he tells me it wasn't, then it would be Andrew. I began my...
Andrew's not on the agenda.
I'm sorry?
Andrew's not on the agenda.
Andrew's not on the agenda. No, he's not. My ballot statement began by saying, I'm the only incumbent who's done right by you.
Okay, we're talking about Councilmember Robinson.
Yes, well, he said...
Your ballot statement, you know...
Andrew, my ballot statement said that...
Let's keep it on topic.
It's on topic. He said my ballot statement was questioned or was revised. I'm telling people, yes, it was revised. Dwight is right. My ballot statement, I said, I'm the only incumbent who's done right by you. Somebody complained to the city clerk. City clerk contacted me and asked me to revise it. And I revised it. So now it doesn't say I'm the only incumbent running who's been on your side. Now it says I'm on your side. So that was the correction. And by the way, some other place here, I had referred to something as council majority, and the individual complained and said that I shouldn't say council majority because council majority refers to specifically Dwight Robinson who's running, so I should just say council. So I took the majority out. So, and now you see that the rest is as it was. Was there something else you complained, Andrew, that I don't remember? Or was that it? Did I cover everything?
You know,
Never mind the question.
your conspiracy theories are overwhelming me.
Yes.
I think we could probably move to the vote. I would like to ask the city attorney.
I just want to quickly say something else. Dwight was saying that he owns 49% of the company, and the other two own 41%. Oh, okay. 51% you said? Yeah, because I was doing the math and I just came to 90%, so never mind, I wrote it wrong. Yeah, I mean, I heard 49% or 41%, but I must have heard wrong.
The question I wanted to ask the city attorney before we vote is the fact that Dwight Robinson has, as I understand it, has given money to Councilman Voights and Councilman Hamilton.
Yes, he has. Yeah.
No, I know he has. But I want to know from the city attorney, can they still vote on this?
Mr. Mayor, council members, is this in reference to campaign contributions?
Yeah, 460. I don't mean under the table.
No, those do not qualify for disqualification under the FBPC regulations. That's a completely separate matter.
Just one other thing.
But I was offered $1,000 cash.
Yes, he was. Yes, he
Councilman Nick.
Yes, and then he said it was illegal, so it didn't happen. One thing, by the way, I forgot and I wasn't quite finished. Dwight said that I have failed to foster a relationship with county supervisors. That is correct. I have failed to foster a relationship with county supervisors because I was doing fine till I realized to continue that relationship, I needed to pay them up to $1 million. So, and that broke the camel's back. So, yes, I failed to foster a relationship because it cost money to do so, and I'm not going to spend your money or my own money for that matter. Well, my own money, maybe $500 here and there, make contribution, but I wouldn't spend a dime, a penny of your money to foster any relationship, let alone my relationship with somebody else. Thank you.
All right. I guess we can cast our votes. Or we need a motion.
All right, I move to censure Mr. Robinson for his blatant lies on the ballot statement and the unusual use of commas in the English language.
I'll second.
Okay, I think that's an illegal motion, so, Mr. City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, Council, this is a minority consensus item, so the agenda item is just to agendize potentially on a future agenda, the censure of Councilman Robinson pursuant to council policy.
Wow. All right, then in that case, I move to, hopefully next time, 2 weeks from tonight, for us to revisit this, and maybe by then I can do some studying as to the English language to know exactly where comma goes and doesn't. But
And how to make a motion.
I just made a motion
Okay.
for us.
Although, before I second it, there's something a little tricky going on here, because we've had minority consensus motions before, and it's never been a motion to make a motion to have a meeting to do something. This is the first time that little jigaboo thing has been...
No, I disagree.
Put in here.
We
You
just
think
did
we've
it
done
on
that before?
the previous agenda item.
Which was what?
Item number 14.
No, I mean in the past,
Both of
we've
them,
had minority consensuses. Well, okay. I'll second the motion, and I'll bring it up in council. I second the motion.
Can I look to the city attorney to opine on this? Because I'm somewhat confused. We put this on the agenda to take a vote,
Well, I'll do it
On the
in
agenda.
council comments so that we can vote and get the
and
item.
now we need to put it on yet another agenda? I don't know.
This is what policy that we passed.
Is that the case, ma'am?
Mr.
Unanimously.
Mayor, council members, the minority consensus policy adopted by the council some months ago provided for a new procedure to place items on an agenda for a discussion of whether or not to put them on for a full staff report and action. So this item, like vector control before it, had no staff report. It's simply a discussion as to whether or not to have it on an agenda for future official action. And that's pursuant to the council policy.
All right, so once we take a 3-2 vote tonight, it's dead, it's gone. All right, so let's do it. Sorry, everyone, we tried. They have the system. It's rigged.
It's called a majority.
Yeah, it's
And
called the
votes-
corrupt
votes
majority.
count. All right, there's a motion, a second. Cast your votes.
What?
That's... Or is it no vote?
That motion fails with Councilmember Robinson, Mayor Pro Tem Voights, and Mayor Hamilton opposed.
All right, so we're on to getting to the actual business of the city in agenda item 16.
Behavior of council is the business of the city.
Mr. Mayor, if we could...
Those last two items were purely political.
Mr. Mayor, if we could, we're going to need a few minutes to set this up, so if you'll bear with us.
Yep.
You guys do this to you? You get an article when you see
we'll bring it back. Agenda item 16.
Agenda item 16, Civic Center Schematic Design Review Floor Plans, submitted by Assistant City Manager, Director of Economic Development.
Mayor and members of the City Council, so we're back to talk about the Civic Center. So as you will recall, at your last meeting, we went through a run-through of the schematic design, and we focused on three things. We looked at the master plan of the site, which is essentially where the buildings are located on the Civic Center campus, along with a single-deck parking structure. We looked at the landscape master plan. We talked about the three ecologies and the plants that would be at certain parts of the site. And we talked about the architectural design concept, which is the craftsman design theme. Now, your council action at the end of that meeting was to approve the schematic design and authorize us to move into design development. You also gave us comments. I think the most significant comment we got from you at this point was that you wanted more information on the concept related to the open roof on the community center. And then the third was you requested a review of the floor plans. So we are here tonight to give you a review of the floor plans if that's what you would still like to do. Now, we went through this presentation a couple times this afternoon before the council meeting. It's about a 35 to 40-minute presentation. So, as an alternative, before we launch into it, it's all good stuff. If you would like to direct us as to what specific building or issue you'd like us to cover, we could go directly to that. Or we can just take council comments and respond to those. So it's really up to you. We are prepared to go through each of the four buildings, but again, I want to be sensitive to what your real interest is at this point.
I initiated this conversation 2 weeks ago, and so I'm familiar enough. I know what it is. You know, we don't need the time. I'm just prepared to talk about the items I've singled out that I want to talk about, so rather than to go through a whole thing. So I don't need the whole thing.
I have a few questions, and that nothing other than that.
Yeah, I think
Okay,
we
so-
can just go through questions then.
Okay, so what I would suggest is we'll go through each of you one at a time, and then we would like to show you some drawings related to that roof on the community center to get additional feedback from you. That would be very helpful for us at this stage in the design process. And again, as we requested the last time, it's very critical to us that whatever direction as a council you want to provide, that it be in your motion. So it is very clear to us what it is you would like us to do next.
Well said. Do you want to start?
Okay. I'm looking at I have two things to say, and they run a parallel course. I should say the first thing first, but I'm going to say the second thing first and the first thing second. So the second thing I want to say first is that in the admin building, we have 3 coffee lounges, 10 conference rooms, 53 cubicles for people, 33 offices, not counting finance, city clerk, and city manager. So that's a lot of stuff, much more than we have now, I believe. So, in having looked at that, that brings me back to the first thing I want to say, which I hesitate to say, but let me say it anyway. When did hesitation stop me from saying anything? We got $100 million. That's a lot of money. We're going to spend 60 to 65 of it on this project. So, with that in my mind, we got a $40 million a year operating budget, and when we have these things, we have, the dog park. Well, we have the dog park, we get the second dog park, and we got the sports park, and that seems to evolving. We'll have these things. So I suspect we're getting 5,000 more people. That's going to be much bigger police budget. So I'm looking at that stuff, our current operating, how likely we are to be going up in the operating expenses, and then spending the 60 to 65 out of the 100 leaves us 40 for the reserve, the special reserve, the emergency reserve, the reserve of the reserves, all those things. And I'm just wondering, and I hate to bring it up so late, are we maybe, is this more than we need? Could we be shaving some money off this? Are we spending too much given? So I'm a little bit worried that it's more than we need, number one, and then, which I didn't mind until suddenly I'm worried about the price.
Do you want to address them as you go, or mention them both and then?
Well, I understand that the outside it almost has nothing to do with the outside, but to fit in those, whatever it is, 50,000 square feet. Yeah, it worries me that I hate to be in the positions that we've been very rich because we haven't been spending a lot of money. And, some cities, they build something and then they can't support it. And so I'm worried that we're biting off maybe a little bit more than we chew. Maybe we could be cutting back $5 to $10 million in the costs. And I wouldn't do that if I thought this is all adequately, but with 3 coffee lounges, 10 conference rooms, 50 cameras, 100 offices, just...
What was let me ask clarification. You said the outside. Do you mean exterior?
Yeah, the exterior.
Okay.
I mean, the costs are because of the interior, the exterior. So the costs are not in the exterior. The costs are in the interior. How big a place it is and what we're putting inside. So,
well, probably. Go ahead.
I hear what you're saying. There's always a concern. We want to make sure that we're being as fiscally conservative as we can, that we're providing what the community is asking for. I'd be curious to find out what the cost of just the administrative side is. That's important. The administrative function of city government is incredibly important, as is the performing arts part to it, the council chambers, performing arts theater, senior center, civic center. And so my guess would be the coffee lounges and conference rooms aren't a significant part of the overall cost. But just to address the one question or the one comment that you made, and just probably some questions that have arisen from it, with the $100 million that we have at this point, that's not a static number. We haven't been paid for everything that we should receive. Right. So maybe our deputy city manager, director of finance could address some of that, and what would we be looking at kind of like full development fee,
Before you do, I was just going to say that that a lot of the money that we have right now is there's like 20 different buckets. So I don't think we're ever planning to use any money from the general fund.
No.
To fund this. Right. So I'm not saying let's go crazy spending, but as long as I think that we're being fiscally responsible and only spending money that is from developers for the specific purpose of the Civic Center, that's as long as we're not going outside of that bucket and taking money from the reserves, the long-term reserves. These are really short-term ones that are designated for specific capital items. So with that in mind.
Yes, Councilmember Gardner. We do have a few different buckets of money. The general fund money, which no general fund money. I can't say no general fund money will be spent on this. It will be impact fee money that will be spent on this that we are collecting from the developers. Currently, we have roughly, and when you say capital funds, we do have a capital fund that is funded from the general fund, and that is excluded from this. This is purely just impact fees from the developer. So currently, in our CIP impact fee fund, we currently have $40 million and are projected to bring in an additional $40 to $50 million. So yes, we do have enough to fund the Civic Center. There will be some fees in the Civic Center, furniture and some equipment that you can't spend because these impact fees were restricted for the building of the Civic Center and city facilities. So the sports park and the Civic Center. They can't be funded for some of the furniture stuff. So at the end of this, yes, we will need to ask for some general fund dollars, but that will be reimbursed by the excess impact fees that we can send back over to the general fund because the city years ago put money into this project. So those can be reimbursed. So there's probably enough to be reimbursed for any general fund dollars we do spend. Now,
From the general, just to clarify, you're saying it came from the general fund to kind of pre-fund
some of the OSA
right.
projects, and
So
it can be refunded. Any excess funds at the end of the day will be sent back over to the general fund. Now, there is, probably concerned about the size of this and the maintenance and the year-to-year maintenance and the responsibility. Like Councilmember Nick has said, we spend roughly $1 million on rent each year here at this facilities. We've done some projections, and we're going to get some more projections that we think that will be sufficient to run the new facility in the size you see behind us on the PowerPoint. So we think we're going to come out just about even across the board. Now, do we know that for a fact? We can do projections, but then, when we get there and turn on the lights and turn on the electric and how much use it gets out of it, that could change it a little bit.
And how about the reserve, the reserve maintenance on a facility this big? Because that's a cost. What is the reserves? What do we have to put away every year in reserves in order to ultimately fund the capital improvements on this? Is that still inside the margin of, have you done those calculations?
Currently, we don't have a reserve facilities replacement fund. During this next budget process, 17-18, we were doing some exercises internally right now between staff that we want to set up a facilities replacement fund and start funding it. We do have some funding sources, and we'll bring that to you during this next budget cycle, and we would like to set this up, do a study on how much, we've got the sports park, which is a pretty big facility now. We're going to have the campus of the Civic Center, which is a big facility, and we'll do the projections going out and see how much we need to fund that, and we'll bring you those numbers during the 17-18 budget process.
Okay, so you're not, with all those things, the operating expenses, the reserve replacement funds, you're not worried that we're biting off more than we can chew?
No, I do not think so. And I've done the projections on most of the stuff going out 5 years.
Okay.
Can impact fees fund the capital replacement fund?
There are some different ways we can do it. There's some different fees out there we can push back across that can help fund the capital replacement over, whether we set up a 20-year capital replacement, a 30-year capital replacement, whatever model we set up in the very end.
Okay.
And Mayor and Council, I'm sorry, I believe you had a two-part question. So your first part was financial.
Well, that's okay.
Your second part is space planning. So
and I don't, it's the space planning that led me to the first,
Okay.
The first question was more of my concern, given that we have the money, but that leads to my third question, which is one of the things I liked about the Laguna Hills when they made their civic center was, they had a part of it that they rented out and made a lot of money because they overbuilt. So, and it looks to me like we're overbuilding, which is great for growth, because then when, whatever we're going, you guys keep voting for more homes. We'll have 150,000 people. So ultimately, we'll fill this thing. But for a while, we won't. In what I'd like to see, right now, this looked like a very integrated plan for our administration. But I was wondering whether or not it was possible to build it in such a way that there was a partitioning off of, for the next 5 to 10 years till we grow into it, we could possibly rent it out and get some income like they did in Laguna Hills. And I didn't see that in here. This looks like just one big, enormous place that we probably won't fill, and I'm thinking, well, wouldn't it be nice if we could cut a quarter of it off and make some money renting that out?
So, Mayor and members of the council, let me direct your attention to our screen up here. So where you see colors in these areas, those are staffed positions or positions we've identified that we are filling when this facility opens up. So as you see there are 2 white offices off to your lower right-hand corner. Those are the 2 contingency offices. Everything else is programmed. So we are growing. We're going to be hiring public works staff that will be taking care of facilities. So there really isn't a lot of extra capacity in that manner. We are building this, you're correct, as our 100-year home. We keep saying that because we need capacity to grow. So the flexibility to allow that growth, if we need more office space, is transitioning some of these conference rooms. The other thing we can do to facilitate growth as well is in our systems furniture, which is a fancy way of saying the cubicles, we can buy new cubicles that are smaller to get more space that way to accommodate future staff. And so we have 2 contingency offices down at the bottom. On the top floor, we also have 2 contingency offices. They're not contiguous, however. So we have 1 contingency office in the city manager's area, and we have 1 contingency office in the main staff area. The staff area is set up that way to accommodate flexibility if we have future reorganizations. We still have the adjacencies. There's not really a, other than the finance department, all the other departments are co-located because that's the realities of how we get work done now. A lot of things are interdepartmental and so forth. So to try to reconfigure that and isolate it would be difficult. And I'll also let Linda comment on that as the architect space planner.
So some of the strategies we used for this is exactly what you're talking about, Dr. Gardner, is in our space planning efforts, because of the ebb and flow and how municipalities and even our corporate clients have to work, is we took it where we actually created what we call the suite, which is surrounded by the offices, which are of existing staff, and created the interior space as a flexible space. Right now, you have, like Deborah was saying, we actually took the cubicles that you had in the sizes, and our interior designer, Akiko, worked with the sizes you have and actually took them down a little bit of a notch. Right now, you have everybody fitting that is in your staff, on your staff, in the cubicles, but later, as we spoke, the trend is really a lot of not having cubicles and having your cubicles shrink. So as you grow, you would have your cubicles, you would modernize your cubicle areas and take them into smaller cubicles, and some of those offices would would be your meeting rooms, because people would be commuting, doing the commuting work scenario and only coming in for certain things. The other thing we did is in strategy was, with a lot of our clients, we found that each one of their groups wanted their own conference room. There was that territorial type, this is our conference room, you can't use it because we need it at all times. So what we did is we extracted those conference rooms to maximize them, and that's why you see there were designated conference rooms for the different groups. We basically took them, minimize them as much as possible, put them in strategic areas so they belong to everybody in your group, and they could be used at different times depending on the sizes they want. They could have small conferences that they needed to have, or they could have larger groups if they want their whole group to come in, and they could, it could be anybody of the groups that could use those conference rooms because they were basically floating for everybody to use whenever they're needed. The other thing was bringing together break rooms for everybody to come into the break rooms when they're in that conferencing area, so that there is area for them to, when you're coming to the break room and it's outside of the work areas, to kind of bring that noise factor and that going back and forth outside of the work areas, and let the work areas really be the work areas for everybody. So there were some thoughts and some different thinking and approach on how we brought this in for future growth,
and then the socialization of how everything happens within your group.
We also have 2 public-facing conference rooms, and that was based on feedback we got from both the public and from the staff. So for off of the green area, which is the city clerk's area, we have a conference room there because we found for the city clerk, sometimes she has large groups coming in all at once for passports. It's good to have somewhere to put them. Also to facilitate meetings with city council members. The council office is very near to there, and so that's meant to accommodate those larger meetings for the council. On the side near the building counter, we also have another conference room that we added to allow for more complex plan checks that can't necessarily happen over the counter. Sometimes we have applicants that want to meet with the building official, so that lends to that other conference room that's in the public area.
And I'll just note, it's just showing the one for development services and all that. There is, I'll say, we missed putting in that door, but that particular conference room would be accessed from the public side and from the interior side behind the counter on that side. So if you're looking at the plans, along with this one being another public conference room that could accommodate any public coming to your city hall. So I hope that answers some of the questions.
Yeah, okay. I'd prefer to make some money on the rentals, but I understand what you're doing now. Okay, the other question I had, and that's my last question on this, is in the senior center and in the groups, when we attended the senior sessions, planning sessions, we talked about, and I forget the name of it, and at the moment I'm going to say Cheers, where everybody knows your name. What was the name of that thing? Okay, well, in other words, the idea was not to have a traditional reception area, but to have it more like a place like Cheers. There might be a juice bar, there might be an oxygen bar, there might be a TV screen. It would be a more active and social reception area and a much smaller reception area, so that fostering these kinds of developments, so people might go in there and have a juice and sit down, and then somebody else comes in. Oh, hi, what are you doing today? Well, let's go to arts and crafts. So more of a social thing. And there was a name for that because it's being done throughout the country in other kinds of senior centers. I forget what that name for that thing is. I'm calling it Cheers for...
Akiko, do you know what we're alluding to? But I think I understand what you're saying, and, you know, if that's something that we're looking for, I'm having trouble with this. I think it's dying.
Yeah, this reception area
Right.
just looks
in,
like the...
in the reception area here, we
It's
have
off.
where we have like game room, and then it's kind of the social area that transitions into the multi-purpose. We are, like we said before, we're in schematic. So what we didn't define how that is, but that is meant as one of those social hub areas. And then we're looking also internally for us, we're looking at how we can do something where we have the catering kitchen. We can maybe turn it so it works the other way also, in that there is that type of juice bar that someone can pick something up. Someone can pick something up here, this is foreshortened, and they can socialize here and meet somebody before they go into the multipurpose area, or meet somebody. This right here, the spine right here, is kind of leading to that too. These are benches so that the seniors can feel comfortable. If they don't want to sit with a lot of people in this area, they can sit on one of these benches and talk to people before they go to their whatever activities that they're going to be going to, or even going to the wellness, their wellness center. So this area right here is yet to be developed and could work very well in conjunction with the catering area, like you're speaking about, that they could pick up something, part of the wellness center, that they could pick up something before they go to their activities.
Okay, good. Well, I'll send you the literature that I have on whatever that's called. I don't know why I'm blanking on it. Because where I've been to other senior centers, not that I've been to a lot of them, although I'm eligible.
Absolutely.
But
Yes,
when I've been to them,
looking forward
those kinds of things are dead space. They're really not
Absolutely,
used.
and that's what we were trying to create this spine, and we put game room there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be game room. And when we meet with them again, we're going to talk about those type of things, and that could be a nice area because I know exactly what you're saying. They talked about a place where they could come and pre-socialize, and it could be something where they can pick up, maybe juice bar or whatever,
Other
would be
people,
offered
and
there.
then they go somewhere.
Exactly. And also sit and not feel like they're kind of just waiting in a corner. It's something that they feel that that's their senior center. So that's the whole, and that's being developed. That is our next step.
Oh, okay, great. That's all I had. Thank you.
Can we just go down the line?
Yeah, thank you for coming again. I'm just stuck on the community center, the partially covered pre-function courtyard.
Okay, why don't we have John Martinez come up, and he can briefly breeze through the floor plan, but he can show you the schematic drawings that led to what you saw 2 weeks ago.
So, thank you again for having us. In brief concept in designing the community center, which you see here in the master plan, the idea always goes back to the concept which really derives from two ideas from the Serrano Summit master plan, which is to create a axis through the site that'll connect your future community down here through to the trail, and then also create a civic terminus. Down right here, over here, right at the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And also at the terminus of B Street, we create a civic hub there. So then now going to the floor plan, you could see in more detail how that lays out. We respect this as two buildings, a conference center here, which focuses on smaller conference rooms. This would see about 24, 14, 14, and 8 people at fixed seating. On this side, we have our large multipurpose room, which is divisible by these partitions, which divided into 3 rooms, each with its own vestibule. And together, these are united with this courtyard. This courtyard, as you can see here in the shaded area, would be partially covered.
Okay,
And
explain partially covered.
so that would be, there's the hole in the roof here where this white area is.
So that's part's not covered.
That part's not covered. The part that's shaded is the covered part. So from all your doors, you come out to a covered area. So in inclement weather, you're always covered. And so you can circle around this courtyard and never be open to the elements from there.
Okay. My complaint, I know that we're in a drought season, but the fact is I believe everything cycles. I eventually believe that there'll be rain again. So I just kind of don't like the idea of having that all open. Even if you want to do like a canopy roof above, 3 feet above the actual roof, but to have that covered, I think that would be better use of what we have. I mean, I know that you want to keep an open atmosphere and lovely, but the fact is you walk through the campus itself is when I feel that we're going to be in the open air. And I just don't know if I like the openness of that room not being covered in that much square feet.
So we have looked at, in this area here, you do have this large event room that could seat about 350 people at these tables, and then also the smaller conference rooms here. This would work more of a pre-function area before going into those areas. This was seen locally at the Oasis Senior Center, a very popular courtyard area. In San Diego, there's a few examples, too, of some courtyards that are very popular outdoor areas where people congregate that don't necessarily have to be covered, because the covered areas will open up out onto that space.
And the other thing that we were talking about for overflow seating in the event that we actually have a big presentation for the community center where we actually have the ability to have our presentations. You have 350?
Mm-hmm.
It's so little I can't read it on the community center. When you have theater seating, how many seats?
468 people at this layout.
Thank you. 468?
Yes.
That's in the theater seating.
Yes. In the conference seating. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I just didn't get that. I couldn't see that little number. Wait. I can't see that little number there. All right, thank you. That's my only.
Okay, thank you.
So I wanted to add a little bit more information on the community center. I know we have the hole in the center, and it's really, the design intent that we had was basically to just add a cover to a courtyard that would be open and flow. Right now, the community center, for the square footage that was set for the program that we had for you, was 13,700, okay?
Square footage for total?
Yeah, total square footage, because it's not counting your courtyard. You really have two buildings that satisfy a program for a large function, and then your individual conferencing areas that give you multiple conferencing variables, okay?
It says the partially covered pre-function courtyard is 11,000.
11,000.
And the multipurpose room in its full capacity is 7,383?
Right. And then if you add the other side, which would be part of the whole program that you have, its total is 13,719, which is encompassed by this area. It's treated as two buildings.
I wasn't watching.
It's this area, that's the program, and this area. Added together is 13. So what I was trying to say is, right now, this is all conditioned space, and this is conditioned space that we're conditioning for you right now at 13,000 square feet. This whole area in here is 11,000 square feet. So we talked a little bit about it last time, and I had to talk to the engineers and talk to them what would be the ramifications. I'm not talking costs, I'm talking square footage. Then they would have to then take in consideration adding another 11,000 square feet of conditioned space, which is almost, you're doubling your space for conditioned space. So we're talking about your mechanical system doubling.
Well, if that was still partially with a higher rooftop, to where you have your rooftop, then you have another 3 feet, so you want to keep the open air aspect of that. You're not going to be adding conditioned space.
But if you close,
We're not talking about closing, we're just talking about roofing.
Yeah, but if you roof this whole area in here,
That's not going to be conditioned space then.
but
We're not talking about air conditioning space then.
But the way we're looking at it, I understand now you have the circulation of air and the circulation of having circulation and how can I say, the wind and, whatever air you can get to circulate through there, hot air rises, so you're going to create a place for the hot air to go up because it has no real way to escape other than the fair side. So what I'm trying to explain is it will not be as pleasant a place if it's not conditioned, or we put big fans up at the top to move the hot air because it's going to be like a little hot box. So
Not with it open on the sides of each part of that four corners. We don't put sides from that.
I understand what you're saying, but the thing is, it's 11,000 square feet. It's big. It's not like a small space.
I think what may help is if we can get to some of the design, the schematic designs that led to what you saw last week. So if we go to the next slide.
I'm just saying that I don't like that open space there and lost that square footage for. I'd rather, and then you have conference rooms between your multi-purpose room and your partially covered expansion, or you're saying that's wasted space for me, really, then. So the fact is, the overflow from the theater area to the partially covered patio, whatever you want to say, open pre-event area is wasted space for me because you have conference rooms with it, and I thought we were going to have a single wall with sliding doors that open. And you have a conference rooms all along that section.
Wait, can you go back to
Is he on the
floor plan?
All right.
Right there, okay.
We have, when you come out of these...
No, not that side, go to the other side. The other side.
Right here.
Yeah, what are those?
Those are vestibules. They're conditioned vestibules. And then when you walk out these doors, then you're outside.
Why would we not have a single Why have the vestibule? What are the vestibules for?
They're basically the ante rooms for going into your large area. They're for sound. They're for light control, for audio control, for everything that's going on in your inside of your large space.
I'm sorry to be negative, but that's just wasted space in my humble opinion. We don't need a foyer before we go into the multi-purpose room. If that's what you're talking about, a foyer there.
So we looked at this in many ways to how it works with functions, and it's very common with large event spaces to have these vestibules because when they have, let's say, if we go one slide before that, when this gets used possibly for, let's say, a wedding reception, these vestibule places are vital to the success of this space because all your meal prep will happen there and then be taken out to the tables. So in designing the functioning aspects of how an event space works, these are definitely useful in the design of that.
If you wanted to have that, I would say move out into the patio and extend that and then give us more space for more tables for our multi-purpose room. I mean, if you want to keep the same. I just see that big open is wasted space for us.
I mean, if the courtyard itself, if we can go through some of the next slides, we can talk to how we arrived there. So.
You know, Scott, something else that we considered when we looked at that vestibule space, a lot of times when you're in hotels and you're going into your meeting session, there's that little registration area before you go into the meeting room. And so that's what I was envisioning when we were talking about the vestibule. If we divide this up into 3 rooms, because we're going to host a conference there, you want that little check-in area that's indoor before you get your materials and then you go into the room. And so that's part of the function that happens out there.
I understand that, and I go to a lot more conferences than you might know, but so even to move that out to the outside, then I just see that this 11,000 square foot open space area is just, I'm just not agreeing with that. And when we talked about, when we talked last time, you talked about maybe having sliding doors open, or we could have open air and have actually extra seating. But you don't have that with those there.
You know, the open door was in the theater. That was in the council chamber. We had sliding doors, you are correct, at both ends, but not sliding doors where the multi-purpose room was. So where he's showing that in the entrance to that open courtyard, there could be sliding glass there, and then sliding glass in the rear that leads out to that.
And that's to secure the building.
Well, I guess where I'm, let me see if I can kind of wrap all these into one, is that it seems to me if you put the vestibules maybe on the other side or on the ends so that there's more continuation, if you will, if you just open the doors up to get to the courtyard, if that kind of makes sense.
So I think it's important that we should walk through this as an event could take place, and it may help answer some questions of why those are necessary.
It seems to split it in half, if I'm understanding it right.
So the way that a group would typically enter an event space is you could come in here. Let's say, we'll take a wedding as an example. You could have a wedding out here on the event lawn or out on the terrace. You would typically have a pre-function space for cocktail hours, so forth in here. Then that event would come into the multi-purpose room for the reception. Now these vestibules will be an area for staging for food prep. So the truck will come in here, the catering truck, bring in the food to the catering kitchen. That catering kitchen then delivers to the vestibules. Let's say if you rented out a third of this, or 2/3, or the whole thing. That's why you have 3 vestibules. So in case there's 3 separate meetings happening, you could have 3 separate prep areas that then serve that meeting room. So this is a very typical and standard layout for an event space.
So what I guess I'm trying to say is, if say can't imagine every possible use, but say we had a graduation just wasn't going to fit in the multi-purpose room, but wanted to spill out over into the courtyard. But the vestibules where they are now, you can't combine those spaces or can you?
You can. There's 3 doors each on each vestibule, and then 3 doors on, so all open. This space would be contiguous out onto that courtyard space. It wouldn't be completely open as one gigantic space, but necessary to serve for maybe that one event per year. You could do that, but for the majority of the events, it would function efficiently this way.
So what I was saying is if you put the vestibules on the other side, on the outside.
Not the other side, on the inside, towards the inside.
No, I'm saying on the outside, on the far right of that space. Then it would at least open up. And I'm not trying to say like that's the prefer. I'm just trying to think of events that may want more continuity and not kind of a buffer.
So are you looking to have events with more than 460
More than
people?
60,
Is that what are you really telling us that you want a bigger meeting room?
Well,
No, I'm just saying if we can just move something around, then if there is continuity, that would be potential without really any additional cost.
the Marriott off of Jamboree, the Hilton off of Jamboree, both have seating between 500 and 600 people. I'm just saying that. I mean,
Now, what are the chances that we have 3 separate groups of 150 each going on simultaneously?
Hold on.
I mean, in a hotel it happens, but what's the chances? We'd be using all 3 vestibules and all 3 rooms at once.
I don't know what it would be, but I mean, I think El Toro, if there's communities, or let's just say El Toro High School wants to have the graduation,
Then you don't have 3 vestibules, it's just one big room.
you'd have one big room, and if you had the vestibules on the right side, you could have the multi-purpose room and the courtyard.
and the courtyard open up.
So by moving the vestibules here to answer that question, it makes them irrelevant to the use of the space as a prep area, because then you're having to go through the space to prep to come back into the space.
I understand. So what about moving those vestibules on the other side of that wall? So just like flipping them into the courtyard and then extending the walkway of the courtyard, and that would eliminate some of that open space area that you guys think is so beautiful, and just allow that to be covered on just shorten that up, because the dimensions of those vestibules, how wide are they?
It probably looks about 9 feet, about 12 feet.
12 feet, so flip that on the other side.
So from what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the concern that this may be too small of space, and in addition, that space doesn't connect enough to a larger space? Is that?
I just don't like the open space in the center. I mean, that's what I'm going to go back to continuously. So if I can eliminate some of that space and flip the vestibules, just flip them into the inside of that courtyard and make that open area smaller, and just so you're just flipping them on the other side.
So is the
Instead of
concern
being
that
in the banquet, instead of being in the banquet room or the multi-purpose room, flip them on the other side.
so by moving these to the open space?
Yeah, but covering it, extending the
Yeah,
cover.
covering.
So,
Just making that
so
open
it's just making this room larger and making this room smaller.
Yeah.
Well, that's not the concern I have, and maybe I didn't understand what you were saying. Can't you walk from the catering kitchen outside through the top of the multi-purpose room area to get to vestibules if they were on the
Yeah, 'cause
outside?
Catering's all the way on the other side.
It's not just the catering, but people are going to enter from there. People are entering.
That's where you enter. That's the registration tables and everything. So that everything comes through into the courtyard and then enters into the banquet, the multi-purpose room.
Yeah, as a sequence, you would typically have the pre-function in through the vestibule and then into your event space.
I just don't like that big of an open space like that, and I think that in the event that we get a rainy season again, and then the fact is that I would rather go bigger on the multi-purpose room in the event that we can have bigger weddings, that we can have bigger events there. We're limited right now, so I just think that, we're planning big. I mean, we have, how many coffee bars? 7 coffee bars, 12 conference rooms. So the fact is that we're going big on the city council, but the fact is I'd rather go big with the community room.
So if we can address just one point about this courtyard space, whether it be from our community meetings, this was the idea that where it came from was from our meetings with the seniors and with the community, the idea of the courtyard. And that came from them seeing other spaces where courtyards are incredibly successful, whether it be here in Orange County or in San Diego. And we're just hearing feedback from the community, and that's why we designed the way.
So we need to take a vote to continue.
I'll move that we continue.
I'll second.
I'll vote for yes.
Cast your votes.
Okay, so if we can move to the next slide.
Can I
And-
jump in real quick?
Well, I'd like to show you some pictures just to give you more context for this design. I'm hearing from 2 of you, and so,
I
yeah.
just want to just add, we can make this space much bigger, but we have to look at the impact that each decision we make has. So if you want to take a 7,000, roughly 7,300 square foot meeting space that can seat 468 in row seating, 350 for table seating, and you want to potentially double the size?
No, double the size.
No. Hold on. Hold on.
Adding 12 feet.
Okay, but what I'm saying is we've got this open courtyard here, right, which is 11,000
Which
square
this
feet.
councilman doesn't like.
Okay, I just want to finish. That's 11,000 square feet, which is bigger than that other space, okay? We need to ask ourselves how this is going to impact everything else. The more people you put in that room, the more parking spaces you need, right? So how's that going to affect it? And we need to be looking at all of that. And how often do we really see that we're going to have more than 468 or 350? And I don't think it's going to happen very often. It sounded like some doors could be opened in those rare instances where we might have very large groups, but I just don't see those in community centers. Of course you see them in 10, 12, 15-story hotel buildings. They're trying to accommodate big corporate events or things like that. This is going to be our community center. I think 350 for a wedding is probably pretty large. I don't know, maybe there are larger ones out there, but I don't think mine was anywhere near that large. And the 468 in row seating, I think that accommodates a lot. We can keep making it bigger. I'm just not sure, number one, that it's going to be necessary, and number two, what those additional impacts are going to be, like I said, with parking and anything else that you can think of. That's the first thing that comes to mind for me, is just more parking spaces would be needed. If you had 550 or you had 600, I'm not sure that we'd have enough parking to accommodate for something like that.
And I agree. I don't think we need to go necessarily bigger. I don't know if this would even be an idea. It just seems like if the doors, it looks like you've got 6 doors for each of the vestibule entrances. And if you open the space larger, I don't know necessarily doors. I'm just trying to say to open it up. I don't know I'm just trying to give you a concept.
There's a way we can look at other opening options and creating a more contiguous space for that. So there's many different door options that we can look at. Yeah.
Whereas we have to look at exiting, so maybe the far 2 banquet areas, and we'll look at the vestibule also, and maybe moving a little bit, maybe foreshortening and making, how we're going to deal with the opening. But in that banquet area, we look at the center portion. When they open it up for a large 350 plus, maybe that whole center area becomes maybe large bifold type doors that stack up to the far sides, and that whole opening in the middle becomes open. So we'll really have pockets to the side, and then it just opens the whole area. So everybody, you'll have a very large area that opens into that whole courtyard and kind of thing. So, it gives everybody an idea of openness into that area. But in other times when you're not needing that, it's just basically a glass window wall that looks into your courtyard from those areas somehow. So we can aesthetically, you can have it both ways. Kind of thing. So
Yeah, I think that's, if you're saying you have glass on the exterior, is that kind of what you're saying? You then would be able to see in.
That whole corner right there is where the major views are for the complex. So that has glass and then doors to actually go out to a small deck and walk around. But toward the inside of the courtyard, what we can do is create more of an opening there that is stackable type doors that open up into your interior courtyard. So that the space becomes more integral then to kind of facilitate that.
I'd like to make a request that you guys come back and we have the dimensions on these layouts so we can see square footage, actually the dimensions of the building and the rooms.
Does anybody know what, say, Mission Viejo, so they have how many people do they book at their events?
We don't have that information with us tonight.
Just trying to get an idea, would we have 600? It'd be crazy to build the space if we don't, but
Well, I would interject, however, that the parking requirements, the 465, was calculated on a banquet room that sat 350.
Well, so the senior center is not included in the parking?
The senior center is included in the parking.
So that we could have joint events?
You could have joint events. What you couldn't do is have City Hall operating, have 200 people in your council chambers, and have an event in here. Then you've blown the parking.
I don't think we have 200 people in the council chambers.
Right, so there would have
to
to
be...
be...
our biggest nights.
Right, so if we had this, the 400 here, we would have to think about what else is going on. So the senior center is programmed as a daytime use, which is offset with the community center multipurpose room. If things are happening on weekdays, weekends, we can accommodate more in this facility because we're assuming the senior center is not operating and the city buildings, the administrative building is also closed.
From my take, anecdotally, I think that the splitting up that room is going to happen more than having somebody come to the city saying, I'm looking for space for 600. I mean, you could have a wedding that's planned and every Saturday, big giant yoga group or something like that that meets every single Saturday. And I think that that's probably a higher possibility of that happening. So being able to break up the room, I think, is important. The one thing that I loved about all of this is just it's all open concept. So whether we want to do a juice bar and then juice bars are out 5 years from now in the senior center, or we want to kind of play around with all of this, it all makes sense to me. And from a parking perspective, I don't think that we can really make the space really any bigger. But we get to utilize this open space. I think that you just made it look too nice. So it looks like it should be actually a structure. You look at the exposed beams and all that kind of stuff, and it just, it looks like it's a structure without a roof, when, in actuality, it's going to be, again, like a wedding reception, and there's a bunch of little, cocktail tables for hors d'oeuvres and things like that before you go into the actual, yeah, absolutely. So that all makes sense to me, and, the concern that I had the last time you all were here was just the drainage issue. I think rain is going to be very, very rare, and we will have some, hot parts in the summer, and we'll have some cool nights where some, little heaters could come out or something like that if they were necessary. But, I think it's going to be a great space to use. It could have just been an open space with two separate buildings and it not look so nice, and we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. So
perhaps
I think you made it look too nice.
The bar might have been set a little high. I was tasked that if I was to hold my future wedding and it was to be here, how would I want it to be? So it had to look nice. Yes.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't necessarily think we need to go bigger. the flexibility, however that works. Is there any other comments?
Go back to that drawing. So that courtyard is actually completely enclosed with either doors or walls on all sides, right?
So for
It's an interior courtyard, and there's no openings into the rest of the building.
So for security reasons, you'll see here we have large sliding doors here and in the back. So for after hours, they can close this courtyard space off.
All the birds and all the crap that's going to come drifting in will pretty much stay there, but they won't actually go into the buildings because those all have doors.
Yes, correct. There's doors that open up on all sides into that.
Well, no, but I'm not worried about, because a possum or a skunk would have to come through the building to get there. But birds and insects and everything would be in there, living there.
We've talked about pest control, as the birds, whatever it is, and using different monitoring systems that we use that are, how can I say, they work on ultrasound waves and things like that. They're at a different pitch to keep them off. And I've used them successfully. I've actually used the buildings. And we were talking about those versus using what everybody sees, which are very unsightly, which are the Nixolite, which are the little bob wires, and for nesting and stuff like that. So we're looking at something that has more a different approach.
Well, where would they nest? They wouldn't have a place to nest.
Well, there are in the rendering that we had last time, there is the trusses that come up. The trusses are in that open area. They could, they have a dimension. They could, perch, and they could, maybe where they intersect, they could stuff their little nest in there or something.
Any other comments?
Do we have a resolution? Lenny?
Well, I'll make a motion that we receive and provide direction to maintain flexibility in that area, the vestibule area.
I can't vote on it until I see the dimensions, so, because even if I count out the tables there, you have 40 tables that sit for 8 people apiece. 40 tables times 8 is 320. You're telling me 350 people sit in there, and you've got tables for 320. So even right there, your number's off, because each table is an 8-person table.
We also have, would be a large, we imagine this as a wedding, so there'd be a large table here that would seat the wedding party.
So that would be the other 12?
Yeah.
So that gives me 332.
And that's why there's, what, you said?
That's why I can't in good conscience say that, until I see the dimensions and see, what is the width and length of this open area? What is the width and length of the multipurpose area?
Okay, we could certainly bring that back to you the next time we come during the design development process. We could offline provide that in the city update, but the next time we come during the design development process, we could display that and get further direction from you.
I'd also like to get some data from Mission Viejo, or Scott mentioned Club 1 and Club 2 in the lakes, just so
Okay.
we see what is the demand.
Like a common size that's requested.
Yeah,
It depends. I mean,
Okay.
obviously, if 320, which you have down here for, if 320 is a typical thing, but the fact is that we in the city of Lake Forest, we don't have our 12-foot or 12-story pour-in-place high-rises for hotels. So this is going to be the go-to place, and so I just see a lot of wasted space out there in that open air. And I know you guys as designers think it's beautiful and lovely. I think, in my humble opinion, I like to utilize the space, and I'm sorry if I'm being blunt, but I think that's just wasted dead space. I don't need a 60-foot by 80-foot open area before I come into the thing, because we have the whole campus. We talk about the beauty of the campus as you go there. So we have open areas where we wanted to have an outside reception as we're coming in. Or even if we give me the dimensions, maybe that is big enough. I just can't in good conscience think that, without me seeing the dimensions on there, say that I can't visualize it without seeing the dimensions.
Okay, so what I think I'm hearing you say is that when we come back with design developments, at the design development phase, we'll bring the dimensions, but we will provide those to you in the CM update. We do have those for all of these buildings, so you'll have that well in advance. And that your direction tonight really is to look to us to provide flexibility to be able to use those vestibule spaces as part of the multi-purpose room, whether it be through sliding doors or some other way to be able to make that room bigger and use that vestibule space so it seems like it's just a bigger room. I believe that's what I'm hearing. You can correct me.
Basically, I love, and don't get me wrong, I think it's a beautiful layout. I love the campus atmosphere, and I like to utilize space. I mean, if you look at my closet or my garage, I'm always looking for areas where I can put things, and I just see that as, it maybe is big enough, but I'd like to see the dimensions, and I make a motion that we receive and file the design presentation, and with the comments made that, when we come back with the design development, that we see the dimensions. So, and in the meantime, I'll talk to El Toro High School, Trabuco Hills High School, and see what typically their football banquets like, or their soccer banquets are like, and see what those are like. And the fact is, the gyms, I've made a request to Jim that he checks with the Beach and Tennis Club. I'll check with the Sun and Sail Club and see what the capacity of those reception areas are. So, it's hard for me to look at it and see it without seeing a footage.
So if I understand, if I look at the room, it looks like to me it's almost 2 squares. Is that right?
Correct.
So if the total square footage is 7383, I could take it half, right? So about 3,700. Take the square root of that. My nice scientific calculator.
It's 64 feet by 120.
You got that?
Yes.
So yeah, I was going to say 61 feet by
64 by 120. That's the size of this room. It would be 64 feet from this wall to here, and the 120 feet from here to here.
I was saying 61 by double that, 121, 122. So.
So it would be about, if we look at this room as an example, I'm just counting the ceiling tiles, it's about double the width of this room, and probably certainly from that back wall to this wall would be the size of that banquet room.
And then the open, the pre-reception, as you guys are calling it, the open air, that's about 64 feet wide too?
Yeah, it'll be a little bit less. If you compare it to the size of this room in width-wise, the open portion would be...
No, I'm talking about from wall to wall.
From wall to wall.
Yeah, it looks about 64 feet.
Looks about the same. Looks about this, a little bit more. It'll be about the same dimension as probably that from there.
Maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
All right, if you could come back with those next time, it'll put me at ease, and then in the meantime, I'll do my due diligence and find out, what's the football banquet, what's the soccer banquet.
So, if you do have that due diligence before we come back, because we do have our design development phase that goes for 12 weeks, we can get ready to get that information. Prior to that, we can start evaluating that. But the dimensions and everything, we can definitely.
Yeah, we have the dimensions, so we will provide those in your update. We'll also add it to what we have on our website for the public as well. And then when we come back during design development, we'll pull together this information and present it to you at that point.
All right, so I think I made a motion that we receive it and allow flexibility for the vestibules. I'm open to.
Made a motion.
I'm open to amendments.
You both made a motion with no second.
I don't know what the difference is at this point, but I'll second the mayor's motion.
It was the same as mine, so I received
But I did
it,
mine
and
first.
I like it. I did mine first. Thank you, guys. I'm sorry. It seems like you guys weren't listening to what I had to say about that. To where I'm trying to see get as much as I can, and so I just see the courtyard open area as, in my humble opinion, is not utilized space. And so if I could utilize that in the other, and maybe we don't need to. And I understand the 3 vegetables, so if you have 3 events, you obviously have to have each one has to have their own reception area. And I understand that's why you couldn't go to the other side of the room like Mayor Hamilton wanted to maybe go to their side. I can see how that could be a problem because that's a setup area. So I understand that. Maybe as we proceed and see the dimensions, my eyes will be opened and the blind will see.
And certainly, would it help if at a further presentation we could bring images of other courtyard spaces that show how utilized they could be? So it doesn't show as wasted space. We can show some images that...
Not wasted, unutilized.
Unutilized.
Okay.
All right, motion second. We'll cast our votes.
That's basically 50 feet wide.
That motion passes unanimously.
All right, that leads us to the city manager's report.
Thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you.
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks for your diligence with us and your patience with me.
And I just caution the city manager, if you could leave it, if you could try and go less than 10 minutes on your city manager's report, I'd appreciate it. All right. I guess our tradition is to start this way. Nothing. Adam. Councilmember Nick.
Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks to the staff. Thanks to my colleagues. Good night, everyone.
No comments tonight.
Well, Dunkin' Donuts is in the house. We have Dunkin' Donuts. I was at the grand opening this morning. Dunkin' Donuts, a Baskin Robbins as a joint venture in Foothill Ranch. It's going to bring, I think, a lot of excitement. It's drive-through coffee, drive-through donuts, drive-through ice cream cones. So I'm excited about it, and it was a great house. Nothing. Thank you.
Just end on this note. I really think we should try and start the business of the city. Agenda item 14 and 15, we could go on and talk about this person did that, this person did that. I think let's just politics out of City Hall. That's really what I think we should try and do. So